Welcome to the Calder Farmstead.
Now the Ice Hawks back out to center in transition. Carlson with Quenneville 2-on-1. Right with Calder Cup, Quenneville scores!
Here's a chance for Barrett. Fighting scores! Off the face-off! Up in Zeminger. Pulled back to Werenski. Has it. Shoots one. Bounces off a man. 5 seconds left. Werenski. Another jam on the shot. Turning and firing. They go! They score! Monsters score! Now they catch each other and they both go right over the top. Matching rights to one another. McDermott gets the helmet off of Cassie.
And now with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out right side with Bear. Looks like cutting to the net. Bear will score!
And here are your hosts, Cece and Sean.
Hello and greetings from the mile-high city of Denver, Colorado.
And Plano, Texas.
Howdy. All right. Welcome to the Calder Farmstead Podcast, episode number 102 for Saturday, May 21st, 2022. If you're hoping for a podcast featuring late spring planting tips for wheat and barley, we are not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast, and my name is CC Hockley, the AHL editor of Full Press Hockey.
And I'm Sean O'Brien from StatsTrack and the AHL's only league-wide analytics guy.
And he's kind of a big deal.
Nah.
As always, thank you very much for watching.
And if you're new to hearing CC and I talk about hockey, we're going to recap the last bit of the round 2 and preview the Calder Cup Divisional Finals. We both watch a lot of AHL games. We're going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break it down. If that's new to you, you might want to head over to our podcast feed or YouTube channel, wherever you're checking us out from. Scroll all the way to the bottom and find episode 0. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries, go check that out, so you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes, and let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes reading the Saban Jimbo drama. It's May. Who cares? Circle back in August. You'll never get that time back. So next time, why not spend a little more time with us talking hockey?
I'm thankful I didn't fall into that Saban Jimbo drama. So, yeah, like you said, it's May. It's May. All right. Well, let's get started with some AHL news and some AHL coaching news. It feels like every episode, well, at least the past few episodes here and there in the past month or two, we've had some AHL head coaching news. And this is one that we thought was necessary in San Jose, and it actually came to fruition. Roy Sommer is out as the San Jose Barracuda head coach. 20 plus years coaching AHL teams under the San Jose Sharks banner. And Roy Sommer now going to be a senior advisor for the Barracuda organization. And so, I mean, assistant coach, forgetting his first name. Is it John McCarthy?
Yep.
Thank you. I had it right. I was just second guessing myself. John McCarthy, assistant coach, now head coach of the San Jose Barracuda as they transition into their shiny new stadium for next season. So, Sean, I mean, it goes without saying, but I'm sure you've got some thoughts about this one.
Yeah, and I sigh there because I feel like we've been doing this for a while, but I'm first and foremost shocked. We've been saying they needed to move on from Sommer since before this podcast started. I was surprised as I didn't think interim GM Joe Will would be making moves like this. Well, he has the interim tag on his title, which says either GM Joe Will is going to be the GM in San Jose, and they're just waiting for a time to announce it or to, complete interviews or whatever. Or San Jose is really crazy enough to let an interim GM make important changes when he's not going to be the guy they hire full time. I mean, yeah, it seems like it's been floated around that he's going to return to being the Barracuda GM, no matter what. But your new GM can still fire your Barracuda GM. But whatever. I think that's still kind of wild for the guy who may not be your future GM to be making moves like this, but whatever, here we are. It's good for the Barracuda to be finally moving on from Sommer, and I promise this will be the last time we have to do this because I feel like we've been doing this so long, and yet people still seem to be confused as to why we're down on Roy Sommer. So let's do this one last time because even I'm tired of it. Sommer has sent 1, maybe 2 guys to the NHL to play a meaningful role in the last 5 seasons. And I'm not counting injury call-ups that have guys like Jaden Hobbegawax playing 3 games at 4th line minutes. I'm talking about the top 9 roles with special teams playing time. Sommer has sent one, maybe two of the guys to the NHL from the San Jose Barracuda that's stuck in the last 5 seasons. That's not that impressive. And you can make the argument that that number is off and argue balls and strikes here from what is meaningful time and all that, and that's fine. But there's one part of Roy Sommer's resume that is inarguable. Literally throughout this entire, we're hiring a new guy, we're getting rid of the old guy, we're bumping him upstairs to a senior advisor role. Every time that this is brought up in an article written by anyone or you hear any of them talk, all of them say how important building a winning culture was. And that's not just San Jose that's done it. It was said multiple times across interviews in other teams when they do these moves too. Chicago Wolves general manager Wendell Young said exactly that to us when he was on the show accepting our Mea Culpa award at this year's award show, about how winning is baked into part of the development process. Roy Sommer has been a losing coach since the franchise came to San Jose. The Barracuda have a losing record overall since their inception in San Jose. They have 2 winning seasons in the 7 seasons they've been in San Jose. And for the last 3 straight seasons, the Barracuda have been embarrassingly bad. The last 3 seasons combined in the Pacific Division, the Barracuda are last in win percentage with 35.2%. Second place is 9% higher in win percentage. Second to last place in the Pacific Division is 9% higher. Their goal differential in the last 3 seasons combined for San Jose, -124. Second worst in the Pacific Division combined over that time is 50 goals better at -74. You are 50 goals worse in your goal differential. Now, my opinion has never been that Roy Sommer was not a good developer. He certainly used to be, and he sent a lot of guys to onto the NHL. But he has been skating by on that reputation for at least 5 years now. He hasn't done that developmental job in recent history. And he has coached the Barracuda to 3 winning seasons in the last 12 years. He's coached the San Jose Sharks AHL affiliate.
Right.
To 3 winning seasons in the last 12 years. He used to be good at this job. But the results haven't been there for a while, and the Sharks certainly took their time noticing. But regardless, the Sharks score points for finally making the right choice to move on here. However, all those points you scored, you immediately lose them for hiring John McCarthy. McCarthy has literally 0 head coaching experience. He has 37 games as an AHL assistant coach. 2 seasons as a developmental coach. Not the head of development in San Jose, just a development coach. Not even their longest tenured development coach in San Jose. That's Mike Ricci. Development coaches also do very different things compared to head coaches. Development coaches don't install systems in practice. They don't set lineups. They don't manage minutes. They don't make tactical adjustments in game. They don't set game plans. They don't review opponent video to see or to figure out what those game plans should be. Does John McCarthy possess all of those skills? Maybe. I'll even spot you a probably. But he's literally never got to put them into practice as a professional hockey coach. Even if he doesn't possess them, he can learn them on the job. But should you be hiring someone for the second best hockey league on earth who hasn't demonstrated prior competency in core skills for the job? Again, we've said this many times on this podcast, and when it comes up in coaching hires, we will be right there to beat the exact same drum. This isn't any personal vendetta against Joe McCarthy, just like it wasn't against Max Fortunis or the many, many others that came before him. Is that the AHL is arguably the second highest hockey league in the world. And the idea that you can get hired as a head coach or an assistant coach with 0 coaching experience is absolutely insane. The idea that John McCarthy gets to jump the line over many other qualified coaches who don't get this opportunity because he used to play for the team and used to be a good captain and was a development coach for 2 years is bonkers. What's even weirder is that AHL teams have started to break away from this kind of hire your old players that everyone loves kind of old boys club process and actually interview and hire coaches that aren't already in the building or have longtime connections to the GM doing the hiring or former players or whatever. And those teams that have done that have had good hiring processes, have had a lot of success in doing so. Stockton with Mitch Love, Ontario with John Wroblewski, Laval with JF Houle, Henderson with Manny Viveros, Manitoba with Mark Morrison, Utica with Kevin Dineen. Whereas recent hires that were internal promotions to a guy without prior head coaching experience. How about Laval with Ian LaPerriere? How's that one going in their first year?
Not good in Lehigh Valley. No, I got what you're saying.
Yeah, like this is bad process. And if John McCarthy works out as a head coach, that's fine. But he should have had to get, start his coaching career like everyone else did. Send him to the NAHL, send him to a D3 as an assistant. Let him grind his teeth through learning the ropes of being a behind the bench coach that way, like everyone else had to. If he's going to be a good coach, he's going to pull through those moments anyway. But to put him in the front of the line to hire him as a head coach in the second best hockey league in the world with literally a resume that is blank, that's bad process, and it should be shamed.
Well, and even it reminds me, so this is quite the opposite situation with Neil Graham in Idaho, spent 3 seasons coaching the Steelheads in the ECHL. Very timely example, Derek Laxdal, coaching the Texas Stars. Jim Montgomery gets fired, Rick Bowness, everybody bumps up the ladder. So Laxdal takes the assistant position and Neil Graham has to go up and take the position in the AHL. Now I understand San Jose hasn't had a ECHL affiliate proper, but even to cull a big name from the ECHL, I mean, I don't know how he would do at the AHL level, but Steve Martinson he didn't get his contract renewed in Allen. So he. So, I mean, that's a big name and Allen and San Jose used to have a good working relationship.
Yeah,
I don't know.
A working relationship.
Yeah. Like an unofficial work. So why not grab a guy like Steve Martinson and give him a shot at the AHL, inject some new blood? But to bring a guy in that just because he's familiar with the systems and whatever like that, it's a cop-out. It's a big cop-out. And I agree with you 100% there.
And I'm fine if you're doing internal promotions in that case. Providence has done it for a long time. And for the most part, it's worked out for them. But I understand the grooming, your assistant to take over the job after you. And I think I would like it to be a little bit more of a competitive hiring process and not just a gimme. Like I would like to see a little bit more done than that. But at least at that point, you've created a pipeline and I can respect that. Putting Neil Graham from Idaho to Texas, giving an ECHL coach a shot that he earned at this level, that's still part of good process. But to just be dragging dudes off the street that used to play for you that you're really liked in the room, that doesn't make a good coach. Being a good player also doesn't make a good coach. Have anybody checked at Wayne Gretzky's coaching record, Patrick Waugh's coaching record? Those are not great. Not to mention coaching and playing are different processes, like much of, two dynamic professions are. Do people think that Joey Chestnut is going to open up a 5-star restaurant when he retires from competitive eating?
Probably. He could probably ride that into a restaurant opening, but
he would just slap his name on a hot dog restaurant. He wouldn't have any actual process.
Exactly. But even with an ECHL coach taking an assistant position, you mentioned Providence, of course, Matt Thomas coming from Cincinnati, coaching in the ECHL to take an assistant position with the Providence Bruins. Wow. Imagine that, allowing the ECHL to truly be what they claim to be in a developmental league, both with coaches and with players, et cetera, but especially from the coaching ranks, to take a guy who's been successful at the ECHL level, like a Steve Martinson, who Allen only missed the playoffs twice in the, however many seasons he coached down there with the Americans, give him a shot. And keep McCarthy as the assistant to I don't know. It's a head scratcher, and we can riff on this until our faces turn blue because
I know.
This is the nature of the game and the coaching,
But we're seeing changes in that. We're seeing teams adopt better processes and hiring outside of their building and outside of their purview and do full searches, and they've done really well with it. And it's amazing to still see teams shove their head in the dirt and be like, yeah, but I like this guy. I play cards with him. I have had a couple beers in the day with him. He's a good dude. Get out of here. Stop.
Look at Mark Morrison in Manitoba. We mentioned them. They had a great season. Mitch Love in Stockton. Holy crow. One of the best teams in the AHL in his rookie coaching season. And he won Coach of the Year.
Literally, we named our 3 finalists. We named 2 of the finalists from last season as well. Manny Vivros has no connection to the Henderson organization, but still got hired and has done a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, John Wroblewski isn't the coach in Ontario anymore, but that wasn't a like you were a bad coach firing midseason. That was a personal choice
circumstances,
split.
Right?
But like it's and especially too, like the season was over. Nobody made you run out and make this choice, in 10 minutes. That's not like what happened here, where it's like you fired him in January, or you made the decision in January, and somebody's got to coach this team. Like that was not what was. Slot for a team that is trying to turn things around in San Jose and is in a lot of trouble in terms of where their roster is and what their cap situation is. You would think that they would make smarter, more well-informed, thorough decisions, and this just ain't it.
No, especially, like you said, turning the page. They're doing a rebrand a little bit. Well, that was their third jersey that we saw, thankfully. But opening up this new building, turning a new leaf. I mean, come on.
The new building looks nice. I'll give them that.
Yeah,
you did that one good.
Right, but to try and bring in a coach to actually, ice a successful team.
So many other coaches available that you could have taken.
So many
other good coaches that have, experience at head coaching at a high level. Like someone is inevitably going to give Louis Robitaille an AHL job. I thought it should have been Hershey last offseason. I thought he was a perfect fit for them.
That's right.
Still,
I remember that.
Louis Robitaille swimming out there. There are a lot of good, like the other smart move you can make, even if you don't even, try that hard, is who is a really good team from the AHL this year? Find who their number one longest tenured assistant coach is and just give him the job. That's also not a terrible choice. Like I'd like to think it was a little more depth in that, but teams have also had a lot of really good success doing just that. Jay Woodcroft, this was so sloppy. It's embarrassing to me. And I've seen a lot of people defend the move online. Well, I've seen a lot of Sharks writers defend the move online, which that's what I imagine the Sharks writers are there to do. That's carrying water for the team. And it's part of the process.
I will say this just from personal, local, perspective. When the Eagles were going from the ECHL to the AHL, their head coach was Aaron Schneekloth. And a lot of the rallying cry was Schneekloth, he just won back-to-back Kelly Cups, make him the coach of the AHL team. And guess what the Eagles didn't do? They didn't make him the head coach. They made Greg Cronin the head coach, and he has turned that team in 3 years into a formidable force out of the Pacific Division. And guess where Schneekloth is? He's an assistant. He's still with the club. That's the connection.
That's it should have been.
Yeah, absolutely. The Eagles did it right. And granted, San Jose Barracuda, although they were mistaken for an ECHL team a few times last year, they were not. They were in the AHL last season, along with Tucson, but we won't get into them. They had a chance to bridge the gap, as it were, to do a soft rebrand like they're doing, to build this new arena, to bring in a new coach, and to Mitch love this thing, as it were. I mean, Stockton wasn't anything to push over last season, but I mean, if you're trying to refresh the organization and bring in a head coach, again, the name Steve Martinson, I only found out a few days ago that his contract wasn't being renewed, but if you put your ear to the ground through hockey circles and it's like, dude, give this guy a chance at the AHL level. I don't know, but
and I mean, there's also there are a bunch of ECHL coaches that you could look at and be like, yeah, that guy's literally never gotten a chance at the AHL level. Even as an assistant, there are so many of them. And every year it's just yep, that would be another one where it's like, oh, we need a head coach. Let's just go interview, I don't know, Ben Boudreau or, Brad Ralph. Another completely reasonable choice. Kirk McDonald's been with Reading and had some success with them for a while. Yeah. Why not give him a call, give him a look? But no, we're just going to keep, who was the captain of the team 4 years ago? Was he still playing? No, cool. Get him in here. So many times. And it seems like it rarely works out for them. But when it does, they just kind of move on and everyone forgets the bad process that got them to that result. But I would like to move on here. I'm taking a vow of silence now. We're not talking about Roy Sommer ever again, unless literally there is a headline where Roy Sommer becomes unless we are forced to talk about him, we're done. I'm tired of this, of beating this drum.
Yes, we are retiring the name Roy Sommer from the Calder Farmstead podcast, barring any unforeseen circumstances. So with that in mind, our diatribe is now over, and we're going to take a quick break because we're going to get into some post-mortem series, some series that wrapped up leading into the divisional finals that we'll be previewing also this episode. So hang with us. If this is your jumping off point and you only wanted to hear about us critiquing San Jose's coaching shuffle, then thank you. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe to any podcast platform that you're listening to us from. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much any podcast platform, we're on it. So subscribe, leave us a review. We would really appreciate to know how we're doing, positive or negative. Let us know. And like and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, where you get to watch this video that you can see right here. Follow us on social media at the Calder Farmstead on Facebook and Instagram, and at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, where we post the memes, and they are different on every platform. So go check them all out. So yeah, after this, we're gonna do some messages. We're gonna play some advertisements, as it were, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. All right, so we have our first series to go post-mortem on. We have to cover one of the North Division's semifinals. And per usual, as we have been doing lately on these playoff episodes, we like to bring in a friend or two. So here's our first friend of the episode. We're going to hopefully bring in a few more. But our first friend of the episode from the Syracuse Speaks podcast, none other than Alexandra Ackerman. Alex, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, we're glad to have you. All right, so Alex, first, I'm going to go over the games and our picks for this Laval and Syracuse series, Laval Rocket and the Syracuse Crunch. So bear with me while we relive the past a little bit here. Game 1, Friday, May 6th. In Syracuse, the final was the Crunch 5, the Rocket 3. Saturday, May 7th, another game in Syracuse, the Rocket taking that one, Laval 3, Syracuse 2. Game 3, Thursday, May 12th, in Laval. Laval takes that one 4-1. Game 4, Saturday, May 14th. We just keep going back and forth. Syracuse takes one, Laval takes one. Or actually, no, I take that back. Laval won 2 in a row. My apologies. Game 4, Syracuse wins that one. They shut out the Rocket 3-0. Game 5 on Tuesday, May 17th. Laval winning in overtime 3-2. And I hate to say this in front of Alex, but my pick for the series was, with Syracuse not having Riley Nash, I spoke a little French. I said, Sky Rockets in flight, délice de l'après-midi. And I butchered that real bad, but that's how you say afternoon delight in French. Anyway, Sean, he took Syracuse, but he said, God, it's close. He was thinking the games we covered for Laval, maybe biasing him a little bit there, but we'd seen Laval get tripped up by teams they should clobber, and where Syracuse seems to find a way to take care of business when they maybe don't play that good. And last but not least, the model, taking Laval at a 50.8% favorite. So not that much of a favorite over Syracuse, according to Shawnee's analytics model.
And I feel justified in those. It went to a game 5 in overtime. If there could be a closer way to end that series, I don't know what it is. Those are two very good teams. And I've said it in other places. Whoever wins the North, I think, walks right to the Calder Cup Finals. I don't think Charlotte or Springfield have any answers for the North Division teams. So, but let's talk about this series. We said in the preview that our X factor was star power. This series was going to be decided by one team's best players showing up and the other outdoing the other team's best players. Sammy Nico had 5 assists in 5 games. Cedric Paquette scored a game-winning goal and then the game-tying goal in Game 5 to send the game to overtime with under a minute left. Alex Barry-Boulet, 2 primary assists, no goals. Charles Hudon, 1 primary assist, no goals. Gabriel Dumont, no primary points in the series. So as far as our X factor goes, I think we got that one. Alex, what did you see from, the Stars on the Crunch side? It seemed like they were making offense in terms of generating chances, but this is the time of year in which that doesn't matter if they don't go in.
I was very confused by that trio all 5 games. I agree. It's not that Dumont and Hudon weren't trying. I'm going to shy away a little bit from the Barré-Boulet situation because I have a feeling that his heart wasn't entirely with Syracuse. I personally feel he wanted to be elsewhere, perhaps with a team that's vying for their 3rd Stanley Cup instead of playing in the AHL. But I have nothing to substantiate that other than, visuals. But Hudon and Dumont, Gabriel Dumont as captain of the team pulled off his career best AHL season at an age where forwards generally don't have their career best AHL season. So if you were to tell me at the start of this series that, who's not going to really do anything, Gabriel Dumont, I would have thought you were crazy. That would never have been a situation that I would have seen coming. And he was definitely physical the entire series. He was trying, but the quality chances just weren't there. And that is just not something that we have seen from him really his entire career in the AHL and certainly his entire career with Syracuse. One of the highs of his time in a Crunch sweater was that game, was it 5 or 4 victory against St. John's, ironically enough, in overtime in 2017 to send Syracuse on to round 2. So he generally always comes in the clutch, and he knows what to do, and he has always acted by example and led by example. And I don't know. I can speculate that he's hurt. I can speculate that the way he plays finally caught up with him, but those 2 in particular were extremely puzzling as to where their game went and why they weren't able to contribute throughout those 5 games.
One of the other things that we said too about this series in our preview was about special teams, and the Crunch PK in the series did not really do well. The Syracuse didn't overall for the season have great special teams, but they were hot at the end of the season. They finished, their last 5 games of the season, a 26.3% net power play, 86.4% net penalty kill. Both are very good numbers. And that did not stand in this series. And we said that was going to be one of the keys for Syracuse to win. The surprising part of all of it was not so much the power play as it was the penalty kill. Like, Laval did not have a high-ranking penalty or power play coming into the series. 16%, 19th overall in the league for net power play in the regular season, and they found ways to exploit Syracuse on the PK. And Syracuse has had kind of a passive penalty kill, which I, if you're a regular listener, know rail against every time. If you're not putting pressure on guys on the PK, you're doing it wrong. But they managed to make Laval look a little too good, I think, on the power play, and that definitely didn't help. I can't imagine there are too many teams that win a playoff series with a 76.5% net penalty kill in the series. Like that is very rarely going to get the job done, if ever. What did you see from special teams from Syracuse in this series?
The penalty kill was tough. They had that one moment in game 5 where Richard scored shorthanded, and hey, that was great. But that was really the shining moment of the penalty kill for the entire series, which is frustrating because in the games leading up to that series, in the regular season, there were penalty kills where I can remember being in the building and the building is just going crazy because the penalty kill was so successful. Syracuse is a building really even dating back to a guy that probably no one will recognize, but like Dan Smith and the Columbus era, who the building really values the penalty kill. They know what to look for. Syracuse has historically had some pretty good penalty kills along the way. Slater Cuckoo and Luke Wachowski led the way during the early years of the Tampa Bay Lightning affiliation. There have been really good penalty kills along the way. And so the fans in Syracuse know what to look for. They know what to cheer for. They know what to pay attention to. And other than that one moment with Anthony Richard scoring that shorthanded goal, the penalty kill just wasn't there. You know, Gabriel Dumont is a big part of our penalty kill in Syracuse, and I wonder if maybe whatever was going on with him contributed to some of the struggles that the penalty kill had. Sean Day was absent from the series. I know we'll talk about that a little bit later, but sometimes I think that maybe the defensive pairings, maybe that made it a little bit more challenging to defend shorthanded, but it was tough. And then when you look at the power play, they just couldn't take advantage of those opportunities, you know, and this was a very physical series. Game two especially was very high penalty on both sides and mostly on Syracuse's side. So that was something that the team needed to adjust, and they did, but it was almost too little too late.
One of the other big notes that I had from watching, not the entire series, you know, as games are pretty much happening simultaneously every night, it's hard to kind of dial in and focus on, you know, one series in particular. But now that there are only 4 left, that should help. But from the bits and pieces of this series that I did see, Laval seemed to have a lot of odd man rushes, or at least they seemed to have the majority of them across the series. And that was surprising to me because it seemed like Syracuse, from my looks at them during the regular season, did a pretty good job defending the rush, you know, not getting burned and having guys caught back deep. But Laval seemed to find its team speed that it had kind of been missing down the stretch. And I think some of that was the guys that were in Montreal that all came back en masse. But they definitely looked like they put, you know, those rush chances to good use, because it seemed like that's where most of their goals came from, where 2-on-1s or 2-on-2s where they created space from the outside into the slot and got pucks in. And that was surprising to me. Did that catch you off guard at all?
It did. And, you know, Syracuse spent a lot of time, especially in the last couple of games, chasing the puck. They spent a lot of time not being able to set anything up, not being able to control those rushes, to control the momentum, to keep the momentum. You know, the turnovers and things that we were seeing were much more reminiscent of the team in November, when they had a lot of players who were hurt, players who were going up and down, you know, and then in December, COVID hit and the team shut down. And then January came and there were all kinds of taxi squads and things going on. So that inconsistency really made it challenging for Syracuse to get control of those situations. And we saw some of that creeping back in during these playoffs. And I can't put my finger on as to why. I don't know why some of those habits and why some of the scrambly, not making clean passes, not being able to connect, not being able to control and prevent those rushes came back into the Crunch's game, but it definitely did. And it absolutely played a part. And in the end, you know, it's funny. I've heard a lot of opinions that Syracuse had a lot of hockey left in them, and that this overtime loss was so crushing, and that, you know, they had so much left to give. And I honestly think the series was lost in game 2. And I don't know if that's a bold thing to say or not, but that goal that was scored with I think it was like 30 seconds left in game 2, the air went out of the building when that happened. Daniel Walcott had just scored not that long before to tie the game, and Syracuse was pushing and pushing, and then they screw up. And a team that had looked invincible at home for the last 2 months lost that game. And I have to be honest with you, something changed then. And we saw it in game 3. And Syracuse was able to put that aside in game 4. But then game 5 rolled around, which had they won game 2, who knows where the rest of the series would have gone.
Fair.
And they couldn't do it. So I honestly think that if I look back at it, that moment in game 2 where Laval pulled ahead in that game with like 20 seconds remaining, that's where the series was lost for Syracuse. I really do think so.
All right. I think that's that's definitely a surprising take, but I don't think it's, you know, wild. Like, I always think of hot takes as being like some wild thing that we're doing for clicks, and that's never been our game. But I don't think that's unreasonable. You had good evidence to support it. So last question here. Would you call this season a success, a failure, somewhere in the, you know, gray space between for Syracuse?
I would call it, I think in any other season, it would have probably been in the gray area, inching over towards failure. You know, the goal of any AHL team is always to make the playoffs, but you get bounced in the first round, maybe against a team that you should have been able to beat, and that's hard to see past. But I think coming off of 2019-20 that was cut short by the COVID-19 pandemic, 2021 that for Syracuse fans at least didn't exist. You know, there was a team playing in Syracuse, but it was a weird setup with a dual affiliation and a bunch of players that nobody knew. And you had to go to Utica at the end of the season if you wanted to watch your team play in person, because the War Memorial didn't have fans that whole season. So that season almost doesn't exist for a lot of us in our brains. This season was really about hope, the hope of coming back together again, the hope of getting back to some form of normalcy. And even with all of the nonsense and the taxi squads and the shutdowns and the delays and everything, they played a full season. And not only that, but they were able to figure it out where they made the playoffs in a situation where it wasn't looking possible in February. And 2 months later, not only did they pull it off, but they got to second place.
Yeah.
So I think with that whole perspective and knowing that there was a lot of stock placed in this season just because of everything going on in the world, I'm going to say it was a success, because I think the fans needed that hope that things were going to be okay. And the Crunch delivered on that. So I'm going to say it was a success.
I agree with you. I think it was a success, and I understand the disappointment for it. But I also think, too, that kind of like every year when I watch the Maple Leafs in the playoffs, where it's like, yeah, they keep going out in the first round, but it seems like every year they have the rotten luck of being like, congratulations, Toronto, you were the third best team in the regular season. Your reward for that in the playoffs is playing the fifth best team, or the back-to-back defending. Like every year, it just seems like in the first round, they're regularly just getting screwed. And I feel like that's kind of how Syracuse's first round here went. Like, technically not the first round, but like there are maybe 3 teams in the East that I wouldn't have, called Syracuse a dominant favorite over: Laval, Rochester, and Utica. Those are the only teams in which I thought could probably play them close, even in a short 5-game series. And of course, they had to play one of those in the first round. Like, if they get Providence or Bridgeport or even Charlotte or Springfield, I think the Crunch walk them pretty badly. If they would have gotten Belleville in the first round, I think they walked Belleville pretty badly, but they got a bad break there. And just, it seemed like the teams at the end of the season that were looking the strongest and the most ready to play playoff hockey and be a dominant team were, by no fault of their own, the ones they were directly going to have to face one way or the other in their first playoff series. And I think they still had a good season. They overcame a lot. They gave, as you said, fans hope at the end. And I think that matters a lot. And especially too, as we're going to run down here real quick, who's coming back for next season. I still think this team is going to have a lot of the key pieces in place that you'll see, and should still be a good team going into next season.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's always the hope that there's a couple of re-signings. There's one in particular, despite his no-show during the playoffs, I'm hoping will return to the team next season, but there was a lot of Nick Perbix is someone who I'm really excited to see develop and continue to play for Syracuse next season. He was able to come into the playoffs and do a lot of good on that blue line that was missing, a character like Day. So that was really tough. So he's a guy I'm really looking forward to seeing develop and move forward. And I think a lot of the pieces are going to be there, with the cap going up a little bit, the Lightning maybe not being quite so tight to it, because that's been the big problem the last couple of seasons, is that they've had to take up guys like Boris Tkachuk and Taylor Radish because of the cap, and they haven't really had a lot of room to negotiate. So I think maybe if that could ease a little bit, Syracuse will be better off, just because so many of those pieces won't necessarily have to go up at once, which was another problem that the Crunch faced coming into this season. The waivers were really tough on them this season. they got some of them back that they ended up losing over the year. Riley Nash, one of them, who you mentioned. Yeah. But then, of course, they didn't have him for the playoffs, which is the Lightning's right. And hey, we know our job down here in the American Hockey League. Like, we get it. But I'm hopeful that some of that will ease up a little bit next season.
All right, Cece, do you want the under contract or the free agents portion of the lists here?
I'll take free agents, but raise your hand if you just completely blanked out the 2021 season and forgot that Syracuse had 2 affiliates. No? Oh, you remember? Okay, because I just when Alex said that, I was just like, oh gosh, that's right.
That. I remember Utica had. I'm trying to remember who Syracuse's other affiliate was. Was that Florida?
I was just going to say, they're currently playing our actual parent club right now.
Yeah, right. It was awkward. Florida and Tampa Bay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So we had some of those Charlotte players, all season long.
That's right. Oh my goodness, that feels like
they
so
didn't
long
have a
ago.
Season. So yeah.
That's right. Oh. Anyway, sorry, just having a big old brain fart over here in Denver.
So looking down the road here for Syracuse into next season, the way too early to be prognosticating about what the roster is going to look like. Here's at least who is under contract in the Tampa organization. Hugo Alnefelt, our goalie mask of the year award winner. Alex Barré-Boulet, Gage Gonsalves, whose name I finally got right on the first shot. Gabriel Fortier, Cole Koepke, Nick Perbix, Jamal Smith, Daniel Walcott, and Amir Miftahov. Cece, free agents.
Let's start with the unrestricted ones. Riley Nash, Charles Hudon, Gabriel Dumont, Remy Ellie, Anthony Richard, Tony Rick himself, Frederick Clayson, Max Lagasse, and Darren Radish. On the restricted free agent side of things, you have Ty Fellhaber, the deadline acquisition that spent most of his time in Orlando from Texas. Simon Ryfors, Otto Sampi, better than Emmanuel Sampi. Alex Green, and Sean Day. I can never not make that joke. Sean's heard it a million times.
Bad.
That was really bad, wasn't it? Yes. Sean's just like, I'm not even going to give that a smirk. He's heard it too many times.
I mean, from the RFA list there, I could see Ty Fellhaber not getting qualified. I would be kind of surprised if they qualified him. Otto Sampi, a very disappointing season from him. He very much milk cartoned most of this year after having a pretty good 2021.
He was very impressive last season. I mean, granted, he was on a line with Radish and Tkachuk, so, okay. But still, he was a huge disappointment. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Lightning is going to say, okay, you go elsewhere now. We've wasted enough time. We're done. We're moving on.
I mean, if they don't qualify Sean Day, I don't know what they're doing. For once, he finally seems to have found the game that we all thought he would have since he was an exceptional status player in juniors. He seems to finally be putting it together and doing so in a way that's sustainable. You got to keep that guy. I think they keep Alex Green. The UFAs, though, I see Hudon walking. I don't know why, but that feels like someone who's going to go, test the market somewhere else. I could see Anthony Richard walking. I don't know. I would keep Max Lagasse, but I also think I could see the Crunch running with the tandem of Miftahov and Alnefelt next year. I have a lot of belief in the two of them. They're young right now and did not look the sharpest this season, but I think
Alex is concerned
next year.
But then again, I'm always concerned about goaltending because the Lightning can't manage to keep the cupboard really stocked with that tandem of that guy that's been around and the younger guy. And so every season it's a new veteran that's coming in. So I'm always slightly concerned. That's pretty much a constant minor anxiety in the back of my brain nowadays. So it's okay.
If I were them, I would, run with the two of them. I think they take a big leap next year. They're both young, athletic, and are, playing their first full season really in North America. Growing pains are generally expected in that formula. So I think they could make big steps next year. I'm a big believer in Alnefelt. I think that kid could be something. And, I wish he would keep the mask, but, that's his choice. Anyone else from UFA that No, anyone else I feel like could go either way. I wouldn't be shocked to see Dumont come back, but like so many of the veterans feel like they're, just every year it's, new team, new year, new team, new me. So I don't know. Like, I think Charles Hudon fit in well, but at the same point, I could see him going elsewhere. If Alex Barré-Boulet was a free agent this year, I'm 100% certain he walks. Like, I could not believe that Seattle didn't keep him. Like, he was someone when he went to Seattle. I was just like, oh, here it is. This is the year Alex Barré-Boulet scores 20 goals in the NHL and plants the flag. But I've also been saying the same thing about Daniel Sprong for like 4 years now, where it's like, yep, this is the year Daniel Sprong scores 25 goals, and we're going to – 1 year it's going to happen, I swear. Anyway, any closing thoughts on the season or who might come and go, Alex?
I mean, I'm hopeful that Dumont comes back. I think he has a really nice working relationship with Coach Ben. Now, the coaching staff is another story because everybody always, every summer, we go through the whole thing about, Coach Ben Grew. Why isn't he been given his NHL shot yet? He's interviewing for coaching. It's got to come eventually. It's got to come eventually. He's kind of like your Daniel Sprong in a lot of ways because every summer we go through this now. He's been with Syracuse since 2016. He's had a lot of success. He has certainly trained up guys for the NHL, but he's also managed winning teams in the AHL, which isn't always an easy thing to do. So I think that Dumont has a really good working relationship with Coach Grew. I think he likes Syracuse. I think his family is familiar with the city, and that's probably one of the reasons why he chose to come back. His wife and kid were here, and 2 kids, I think. And they were at almost every game. The boys were in the Dumont jerseys and everything. So I think that atmosphere was really friendly to them, and they really appreciated that. So I could see him wanting to stay. Honestly, I think not going after Anthony Richard will be a pretty big mistake because when he came into Syracuse midseason, nobody really knew much about him. I mean, there was some talk on Twitter from the fans in Milwaukee about how much they had wasted his talent and whatever and blah, blah, blah. But he proved to be huge, especially for Syracuse during the playoffs when nobody else decided to show up. So I think not going after him would be a mistake. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on there. The goaltending is just always going to be my little worry, and that's okay. But I would like to see a little bit of a retooling of the defense. And I kind of say this every single season, but it just doesn't seem like they have found that formula yet, really since, I don't know, maybe again, like the Matt Taramina, Slater Cuckoo, Luke Wachowski group. That group was a solid group of blue liners. They haven't found that really since that group moved on. So I would like to see a little bit more effort put into retooling the blue line and seeing what else could be done there, because that does seem to be one of Syracuse's weaknesses, both on special teams and just in general as the season goes on. So I would like to see a little bit more there.
Just a fun aside, since we talked about coaching and staffing earlier in the podcast, and I feel like our thoughts on who should get hired are well established, but how many years do you think Ben Grew would be in the NHL as a head coach if he had played in North American professional hockey for like 5 years at like a, fourth line grinder level? Because his entire playing career as a professional is basically in Europe and France. Like if he was a fourth liner for 5 seasons on, bouncing around the Maple Leafs, Canadians, and like New Jersey Devils, he'd have been a head coach in the NHL for 5 years already, right? Like we all just kind of intuitively know that to be true, but because hockey hires in the dumbest way possible, they're like, oh yeah, I never saw that guy play in the 80s. What kind of coach could he be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and what's really hard too is that a lot of the times coaching in the NHL follows first you're the assistant coach, then you get promoted or whatever. I don't see Ben working very well as an assistant coach.
Interesting.
And I sometimes wonder if that's one of the things that's in his way, is just because he is very much, this is how we're doing things. And you can either get on board and realize that it works, which is one of the reasons why I think Syracuse usually starts out kind of slow every single season. The players have to buy in. And it takes a little while to build that buy-in and for them to see that like, oh, coach isn't just ragging on me all the time and being a pain in my butt. He's actually making me better. Okay, I got this now. That takes time. And as an assistant coach who's supposed to sort of be the gentler, more friendly person that handles the emotional side of things, I'm just not sure that that's going to be a good fit for him. And so making that jump directly from AHL head coach to NHL head coach when there's no chance of doing that within the organization, because the Lightning isn't going to let Cooper go anytime soon.
John Cooper will need to have that team in like the draft lottery for 5 straight seasons before they're like, yeah maybe it's time. Like, he has one of the best goalies in the world, one of the best defensemen in the world, and one of the best forwards in the world on his roster. That's going to take a lot of effort to screw up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So he's not going anywhere with that. So it's just a matter of now, all right, who's going to take a shot on him? And if you you're right. It's a lot of, you have to do your time as an assistant coach, but I could see a team not wanting to give him a shot at that aspect because he's never coached the NHL level, but like, if I would definitely be interviewing him for assistant coach jobs, but if that's definitely not his bag, and looking back at his resume as a coach, like he's been a head coach for most of it. Like there are very few spots where he has been an assistant coach. There's 3 seasons in his entire coaching 22 year coaching career that he's been an assistant coach. That's not a lot. So I can see how you kind of get to that. But yeah, he should definitely be getting looks, and hockey is a stupid, structure as a whole when it comes to HR processes. But anyway, Alex, thank you so much for coming on. Cece, any final thoughts here from you for the Syracuse Crunch? Because this is probably the last time we're going to talk about them until like the off season and season previews, really.
I mean, Alex is the expert. So, I mean, having her on and giving her the platform and the opportunity to speak on the Crunch was, I think that was plenty. That was, I don't need to chime in on anything else.
That's fair. We're also running it like half an hour for the segment, so we should probably start cutting it.
We tend to do that when we have guests on our show, even though we're trying to do these quick and dirty, as Sean said.
Yeah, we're
that's okay. We got to give it room to breathe. Give it room to breathe. Yeah.
Well, and I was the one too that went over your video requests too with time, just because that's what I do. So, hey,
it's all good. It's all good. And again, thank you for the episode 100 chime in. I mean, it was quite a blessing to have those kind words from you. So thanks.
Absolutely. And you guys deserve it. Totally. 100%.
Thank you so much, Alex. Yes. We will see you again probably as we start talking about next season, because it's, not a lot of Crunch stuff happening now, unfortunately. But thank you very much for coming on. We hope to see you again soon. Also, plug where people can find your work.
So my podcast is Syracuse Speaks, and it is currently available everywhere, including Amazon. It is now available on Amazon Music and Audible, as well as Apple and Google and all of those places. It's hosted through Anchor too. So if you prefer to listen to it through the original host, you can find it over there as well. My personal Twitter is at Allovimo, ALLOVIMO, and that is where I post pretty much everything that goes on with that, but also an eclectic mix of teacher stuff and Harry Potter and whatever else I happen to be focused on at the time. So if you're into that, please feel free to follow me over there, and you'll get the hockey stuff, but you'll also get some other things too. So yeah.
All right. Thank you, Alex, so much for your time. Take care.
Thank you, Alex.
Bye.
See ya. All righty. It is time to go to our second North Division semifinal matchup and do a postmortem on the Utica Comets. But before we do that, we have another guest that we'd like to introduce. And he writes for the Daily Sentinel out of Rome, New York, and he's covered Utica Pro Hockey for a number of years now. It's Friday. You know what that means. Ben Burnell coming on the show. How are you doing, Ben?
Good, guys. How are you? Thanks for having me. And I appreciate that you guys have chipped in that kind of wrestling reference that I've been trying to do all year whenever I'm at home games. And I feel like pro hockey and pro wrestling need to combine a little bit more. So I've tried to, add that stuff in there. But again, thanks for having me, and looking forward to chatting here.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've done our fair share of melding the two. I think at the minor level, it definitely works a lot more, especially I feel like you get a lot of the same like overlapping cities for the like WWE and AEW, like kind of roving tours. At least that's the kind of feel I got. I forget whose arena it was I was looking up. I think it might've been Utica's that's having like a WWE house show like next week or something like that.
Yeah. July. Yeah. They've been here on and off for a few years. I mean, you can go back and look. They did a Raw way back in like the early 90s in Utica.
Oh, wow.
So a bit of trivia there. So it's nice to see them back and people excited about WWE coming back. So
absolutely.
And first AEW pay-per-view, Sean, Rosemont, Illinois, a couple of years ago. So
I did not know that. I have genuinely not watched professional wrestling in years.
You're missing out, man. It's good stuff. So.
I just recently got back into it. So AEW has been my kind of go-to here. Otherwise, I mean, I watched it when I was younger and then got out of it for probably a decade or more, and just decided to get back into it, and
sucked us back in. Oh yeah.
Stuck around. So
I'm at least aware of it enough that like if you showed me like the WWE champion, I'd probably be able to get it like a multiple choice. So anyway, CC, let's get this show on the road here. People are listening to us for hockey, at least probably. So
yeah. So number 1, Utica against number 5, Rochester. To kind of rewind here on the series, Tuesday, May 10th in Utica, New York, 6-3 victory for the Comets over the Rochester Americans. Saturday, May 14th, Rochester taking one back, 4-3 over Utica there in Utica. Sunday, May 15th, Rochester, another 4-3 victory, but this time in Rochester. Tuesday, May 17th, Utica now taking one in Rochester, 4-2 victory for the Comets. Thursday, Game 5, May 19th, Rochester winning 4-2. They had the 3-2 lead and they potted the empty netter. So the Amerks win the series 3-2. And we're going to talk about picks, but we didn't really get to pick this one because the AHL schedule is a little wonky and it was kind of in between episodes. So, but Sean talked about it in a thread on Twitter. He picked Utica. The analytics model that Sean programs picked Rochester as the favorite, 55% favorite. Ben, we are going to get Sean's thoughts on the series first, and then we will have you dispense your wisdom there as you are the boots on the ground guy for Utica for sure. So, Shawnee, take it away. What exactly happened in this series?
The Comets did not have good starts in these games. Game 4 was the only time the Comets scored first. Otherwise, outshot and outscored in the opening 10 minutes of the game in 4 out of the other 5 games. I don't think they did a very good job of containing the Amerks on quick counterattacks. I mean, how many quality rush chances and breakaways did the Amerks get? It felt like a lot. I said in my 280 character preview on Twitter that the tale of the series was going to be told in the neutral zone. I think the Amerks won the battle through the neutral zone, and here we are. And that's not to say the Comets didn't generate their own rush chances or goals or quality counterattacks, but they seemed like they were on the short end of the total chances across the series. And I think a fair portion of the Amerks winning that neutral zone battle is the absence of Riley Walsh, especially in Game 5, where it felt like towards the end, the Comets struggled to gain the zone and get the offense going in Rochester's end. That's Walsh's bread and butter. It has been all season, and he wasn't there to make that impact. And I think that definitely hurt them in Game 5 especially, but down the stretch too, as he wasn't there. If I remember right, appendicitis is what took him out, Ben?
Yep, that was the finally got the confirmation that on Wednesday after noticing he was out on practice the previous week, and I got no update, and then went missing. I mean, I saw him around, so he was still kind of around the team, but then didn't play, and the word was injury, and then I finally asked Kevin Dineen what the deal was, because everybody was asking where in the world is Riley Walsh, and so came down with the appendicitis surgery, and hope he I'm sure he'll recover fully from that, but it's obviously an inopportune time to have that happen to you, so not much you can do about it.
No, I remember too, we were talking about him being a scratch, and they're like, there's no way he's a healthy scratch. Like, he's your number one defenseman and best puck mover. He would have to commit like an actual crime in order for Kevin Dineen to justify, like, if he was late to a meeting or whatever, that's like a 1 period sit on the bench. But like, yeah, for him to be missing time, something definitely had to be genuinely forcing him to.
That was my thought as well.
Yeah. What did you think of the series? Why did the Comets come up short in your mind in this one, Ben?
Yeah, I don't know that they completely had everyone going, I guess is the best way to put it. You look at game 4 and Kevin Dineen says it was all 19 guys that contributed. I'm not so sure that they had it all like that in the other games, especially game 5. They just were not completely there. And like they said, the puck battles weren't going their way, and the puck decisions weren't ones that were good, is, I guess, the best way that Kevin Dineen described it. I certainly think they missed Riley Walsh. I certainly think this is a different series if Frederick Gauthier in the lineup, and that's unfortunate that he's been out. He was out for a month, more than a month, with what I think is a lower body injury, because got hurt in that Syracuse game. It looked knee to knee. I don't know officially what happened there, but I think he was a big part of that team. And as much as the Comets said, we're at our best when our backs are against the wall, it just, and they got it in game 4 because they needed the win. I just didn't feel like they had that, but at the same time, Rochester's a good team. Like, don't discount, what they have. And yeah, they kind of snuck into the playoffs. But at the same time, like, they were missing guys. They didn't have, their full lineup for a lot of that, regular season. So yes, snuck in, but at the same time, that is a good team. And at no point did I ever think that series was going to be just 3 games. It was always going 4 or 5 in my mind. You look at that regular season series, they were even. They were both 6-5-1 against each other head to head in the regular season. Like, there's no way that series was going to be a blowout, or game 1, obviously Comets pulled away, but the rest of that series, and for the most part 2, 3, and 4 were 5. I don't know. I mean, you have the lead 2-1. You'd like to, in my mind, a third goal changes the dynamic of things, and they were kind of just hanging around, and they couldn't get that third goal to kind of take a 2-goal lead. And then Rochester comes out in the third period and gets quick goals, and you're like, I don't know. And then, the Comets don't have a lot of shots in that third period, and it just, Rochester clamps down. And, even on the road in a loud building, if you're clamping down and things aren't going your way, then it's going to be pretty hard to come back from that.
And I agree that, like, it definitely seemed at the end, in the third period, the Comets were playing to not lose the game. Yeah. And it's hard for me to put that blame on anyone on Utica, because that's the decision that 95% of professional hockey coach make. We have a 1-goal lead in the third period of a win or go home game. Like, I'm not trying to, be telling my team play like you normally do, and they make a stupid turnover on the other blue line and they give up a goal because they're not, just trying to get pucks deep and play conservatively.
Yeah.
So like, I understand that, like, just prevent defense kind of mode. And then when it came time to turn it back on, they couldn't fire up the Jets in time.
Yeah.
And I sympathize. Like, I don't like that strategy, but I understand, it's easy for me to, be critical of that strategy sitting by my computer and not on the bench in the building with, my season on the line.
Yeah.
And I imagine in that situation, as much as I would detest it, I probably end up doing the same thing as Dineen's staff, in that sense of just play lockdown defense. And, we don't need to shoot more pucks. We're already winning. So I don't like it, but I understand how they go with that. And I think a lot of other very good coaches do the same thing.
And the penalty kill too just kind of lost it in the postseason. I mean, they were last among postseason teams in penalty kills. So, yep. And Brian Flynn pointed that out last night. He's like, I think they scored at least one goal in one power play goal in each game. He's like, that's the series probably. I mean, you get more on that out of that penalty kill, and we might be talking about this differently, as in, Comets have moved on. Like Kevin Deneen said, the margin of error in the playoffs is very slim. Yeah. And if you have a team where I counted 20 guys before this series started, didn't have any AHL playoff experience, that is a lot of players. You can downplay it as much as you want, but and you talk about how much the postseason's different. Like, 20 guys not having postseason experience is a lot of players in the AHL. And I feel like that can kind of come back a little bit. And I like we talked about, I don't think they had everyone going, and I don't think everyone necessarily had the greatest of series. So I feel like maybe that contributed, but again, Rochester, opportunistic, and they've got a good team. And so you can't take anything away from, what they've done, and got momentum now with wins over Belleville and Utica. I mean,
yeah. And I mean, I remember at the end, like towards the end of the season, Rochester's fans were very down on that team. Like, as they were, when you get swept in a weekend series by Cleveland in like what is a critical series for you to make the postseason, that's a tough pill to swallow. But the whole time I was like, if this Rochester team gets healthy and gets, the players back from the Sabres, they're going to be very, very dangerous. And here we are. I thought Utica would be a little more stingy in the neutral zone and be able to manifest more of a counterattack, whereas I didn't think Rochester is more of a counterpunch team. And I feel like I missed a little bit on that one. But let's I think we've, given all of the Utica fans enough to grieve about for an off season. Cece, let's move on here a little bit, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. So overall, again, we'll start with Sean and then we'll go to Ben a little bit. But overall, Utica's season, the whole body of work, success, failure, or somewhere in between.
I mean, I understand, for me, the end is certainly disappointing if you're a Utica fan, but I think calling this season anything but a success is inaccurate. A season with a lot of changes too, from a new affiliation, new roster, new coaching staff, to new colors, new uniforms, a new mascot, and the fan base seemed to fully embrace all of it. And that's not common for changes of that magnitude. But I thought they did a great job of building fan culture with Bull's Army. I absolutely loved the chicken Riggis beef that this series started. I have no idea what chicken Riggis are, but I'm now curious at least. But one of the best regular seasons in Utica's AHL history. And like we said with Syracuse, they had the rotten luck of playing a legitimate Calder Cup contender in the division semifinals instead of someone like Wilkes-Barre Scranton or Bridgeport, that were teams that were never going to be expected to do this, whereas we thought Rochester was capable of it the whole time. It was just a matter of them getting reinforcements and getting healthy, and they were going to be a Calder Cup contender. So for me, this is a lot of just, yeah, you guys had the rotten luck of being in the wrong division, where it didn't matter if you played Rochester or Laval or Syracuse. All four of them are Calder Cup contenders in my mind, and whoever wins this division is going to walk right to the Calder Cup finals. Like, I don't think Charlotte or Springfield is going to have an answer for either of the teams that could possibly face them from the north. But I also think too, like, they set an AHL record, greatly outperformed our expectations from the beginning of the season. Did it end the way that we hoped? No, it didn't. But I don't think that qualifies it as a failure. Also, as an aside, we're still 2-0 against the Utica Comets in Twitter Connect 4. And anytime you guys want a rematch, we are available. We know you have some free time on your hands right now. So
off season's up. So
yeah. Ben, success, failure, somewhere in between.
So let's start with chicken Riggis first. It's a classic dish in the Utica area because it is a largely Italian. There are a lot of different nationalities and different cultures in Utica, because this is a very high refugee area. And so you've got a lot of different restaurants from a lot of different cultures, but Italian's the big one. And so chicken Riggis are basically rigatoni and chicken, and you get like a creamy sauce. They have vodka sauce, which I got to tell you, if you ever come to Utica, you get the chicken Riggis with the vodka sauce because it's pretty good. But various restaurants in the area have them, and there's always a debate about which one, has the best. So it kind of turned into that, because that's kind of like the delicacy and the most popular one here. And so you go against, garbage plates. And so there was a sign, I think in Game 4 in Rochester, that said, chicken Riggis are terrible or suck or something like that. And so that became a rallying point for a lot of the fans. And there was I think a garbage plates suck sign, in Game 5. And then Ball's Army during the day was talking about, well, we're going to start a chicken Riggis chant.
And they did. I heard that on the broadcast.
It was loud. And I give them absolute credit for that, because I heard people laughing right away when it started. So that was well played. I guess I haven't heard a chant quite like that, because usually it's like, let's go Comets, or, Utica, and those get loud. But it's the, chicken Riggis chant that is going to stand out for me in that series in terms of chants and everything. But I got to agree with you. I think this is it's a success for all of the reasons you mentioned. You look at it too, with it being a new affiliation, and New Jersey had been in here in the past, for 6 years, from 1987 to 93. And I think there is a segment of the hockey fans here who maybe weren't pleased with New Jersey when that happened back in the early 90s, because a lot of things were happening in Utica that time too. And, so when they came back, it's a different management groups. There's a management group actually rooted in Utica, where before there wasn't, and it's a, different management group in New Jersey. So, I don't think when it started you could compare the two situations. And so I think people bought in. I mean, you can clearly tell that. I don't know what players were, thinking was going to be, the atmosphere was like, because I know a lot of them have played, or at least some of them have played in Utica on other teams. So they kind of know in that regard. But, from everything the players said, it just seemed like they were really impressed by the fan base and the way that kind of everyone kind of gravitated toward them. And certainly a 13-0 start's going to help.
Oh
that.
Yeah. You start 13-0, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. And I mean, you look back when Vancouver brought their AHL team here back in 2013, and the team started 0-8-1-1. Like, it got a little shaky then.
Yeah.
But they rallied around it still, because they made a pretty good run. And then the second season, they get all the way to the Calder Cup, and then there were, I would say, some kind of down years there. So, but people were still, I mean, Utica loves its hockey. You'll hear people all the time say it's a hockey hotbed. And I agree. You've got people tailgating before, playoff games, and you've got everybody buying into whiteouts, and you've got people with stickers on their cars, and, they're wearing their t-shirts, and they've got their Nico Dawes jerseys, or you've still got Thatcher Demko jerseys around. Like, I don't know what other cities are like, for AHL. I know obviously, there are some that are pretty popular too, but I feel like by and large, a lot of these players were surprised, at least in media availabilities, about how, excited they were to have the fans. And especially coming from a situation where they're playing at Newark's practice facility last year, and there are no fans.
Oh yeah. That was
so, from that point of view, I think that, you take that as a win. You look at it as from the development standpoint too. Alex Holtz, Fabian Zetterlund. Like, I looked at the roster before the season started, and I looked at Fabian Zetterlund and I said, that's going to be a guy that has something to say this season. And I think people rallied around him too, because he's got such an exuberant personality. And I think that's missing for a lot of hockey. And so you get a personality and you get a rambunctious fan base that likes to cheer for stuff like that. I certainly think that helped him a little bit. You surround him with guys that have offensive talent and skill. Your AJ Greers and your, Chase DeLeos. Ryan Schmelzer had a big year. Like, from a development standpoint, and you bring in a coach, like Kevin Dineen, and you've got Sergei Brelin and Ryan Perrant. I think they gelled well together too. So, the players all said they like playing for him. And I think that, that goes a long way. Obviously, you would like to think that starting 13-0 and being the best record in the Eastern Conference and the North Division for pretty much all of the season leads to more postseason success. But, the postseason is anything's possible.
Yeah.
So you'd like to have a little bit more postseason success after that regular season, but
I think it'd be interesting to see, like, and obviously we can't make this possible, but like, if anyone's opinion on like who's out there, listening, and it was like this season was a disappointment because of the way it ended. I'm like, if you put Toronto in the playoffs and had them play Utica and Utica spanks them in the first round, like, does that change perception of what this team's season was? Because then they won a playoff round. Yeah. Like, I mean, it shouldn't, because it still ended in the same place. They lost to a cup contender, but I feel like that's that kind of stigma of like, yeah, but you didn't even win a playoff round. I'm like, well, they didn't even have to play one. Like, does that not count for something? But if a series falls in the forest and doesn't make a sound, like, it's, and like, I feel like too, once kind of the like grief of the season being, fresh over heels, and we're into August, September, you're going to see fans look back on the season with a much more positive note than they do right now. But I understand the disappointment, but like, that's from an outsider's perspective, there are at least a dozen AHL teams that would have looked at your season and been like, man, if we could have had, that kind of buy-in from our fan base, our players, our town, we'd have taken it in a heartbeat. And I think that's something Stockton should hang its hat, or Stockton. Oh my God, that Utica should hang its hat on.
Oops. Different top team, different conference.
Yeah.
And I mean, you look at the guys that got a chance in the NHL, and they're stepping in and contributing right away for New Jersey. Like that for a team like New Jersey, or an organization like New Jersey that's struggled, to have those guys step in and look pretty solid, I think is a testament to, what they're doing in the AHL. Like, I mean, you can certainly find threads about how Vancouver hasn't really had anyone graduate. And, I never really agreed that it was Utica's fault.
Yeah.
I think maybe you have to look at the organizational way of doing things there. So, I think it's a win to have guys immediately go up and step in and say, okay, maybe they have a legitimate shot at, maybe taking a spot next year. And, I think there's a lot of time between then and now, but at least in May, you're saying, well, this guy could have a chance, rather than, well, does he have a chance? You know what I mean? So, I think it's, disappointing in that you'd like to think that you might have gone a little bit further, especially when you have guys that say, this is a pretty tight team and we've got the talent in there to do it. And, you fall short. So I think once you step back a few days and look at it more, you can probably consider it a little bit more success. And I think there are people are right now, but I think there are obviously people that are obviously, maybe a little bit sad about how all went down, especially from a New York State rival. You'd like to beat your rival, just down the thruway, but someone's got to lose. So.
All right, well, let's look ahead a little bit to Utica for next season and talk about who's under contract, who's a restricted free agent, who's a UFA. I will take the lead here and read off the guys who are at least on Devils contracts. Whether they are in Utica next season's a thing to be seen, but they will at least be in the organization. First and foremost, Alexander Holtz, Shakir Mukamadulin, Graham Clark, Nolan Foote, Nico Dawes, Akira Schmid, Nikita Ohochuk, Michael Vukovic, Kevin Ball, Joe Gambardella, Jeremy Grollo, Robbie Russo, Penn State alum Arnie Talviti, and Riley Walsh. Those are your under contract guys in the Devils organization. CC, let's start restricted free agents and then pivot to the guys who can straight walk away.
Yeah, just a couple restricted free agents, Tice Thompson and Fabian Zetterlund. Unrestricted free agents, though, some big names that we talked about earlier: AJ Greer, Chase DeLeo, Frederick Gauthier, Brian Flynn, Ryan Schmelzer, and Tyler Wotherspoon. So some bigger names in those free agent piles.
Yeah. Any idea if you had to pick one of the UFAs that is the most likely to come back, Ben? Who would you take out of that pile?
Well, I've already said it on Twitter. I think the Devils should have re-signed AJ Greer yesterday. So, and I know some of the talk there on the Twitters, and I know it's Twitter, but it's he's more of a veteran guy. But look at what he did this season. Like, he just had a career season.
Yeah,
and give him a look at. Maybe a role down the lineup, but you got to give him a chance. And he got hurt in his stint with the Devils, and he had a concussion, so he was out. And then he came back down and just turned on the afterburners. And I remember talking to him after he came down, and he's like, "I literally go to bed dreaming about scoring goals." And that is an all-timer quote. I loved it. I love that. He's honest, and it's refreshing to have that. So, but you look at what he did on the ice. I don't know how you don't bring him back. I haven't talked to the Devils. I know I asked him, just before the regular season ended, what if he would consider it, and he really seemed open to it. He said he enjoyed his time in the New Jersey organization, and I feel like maybe that's hasn't necessarily been the case in recent years, maybe for some guys, because of, it's been a rebuilding kind of process. And, I think he's one guy you absolutely should bring back. I think you should certainly look at Chase DeLeo. I know they were high on him when he came over from the San Diego organization last summer. So, and all he did was put his name in the MVP conversation. He was my MVP. I certainly get Greer, but I wonder how much that team is different if you don't have a guy like Chase DeLeo scoring goals and playmaking ability, and even maybe a quiet leadership role. So those are two big guys that I would bring back. Obviously I think there's maybe vet considerations there, so you don't know, but. Obviously, I think Gauthier was huge for them on special teams, and obviously showed a good dash of offensive ability that I don't think maybe has been there as much as in the past. So, and I think, that comes with having these guys together, and they just meshed really well, it seemed, on the ice. So, you got a guy like Joe Gambardella coming back. I think he was key for them. I think I'd like to see Ryan Schmelzer back, just because he's the captain. He's from New York State. He's been in the organization now for 4 seasons, something like that.
Yeah, I think of all of the guys I see on that list, he is the most likely to me to come back. Like, I think they should take Greer and DeLeo and like that whole list. The only one I think I would walk from is Tyler Wotherspoon, but I also realize I am much lower on Tyler Wotherspoon than most people. But I feel I feel like I saw what I saw, and I'm gonna stick by that. But like, I really don't feel like he was as good in the D zone as he could have been this year. But like, Schmelzer was played like a lower role in the lineup, but like he was still a critical piece for a third line, as critical as you can be for a third line center. And you could definitely tell that he was not the captain by accident. I think he comes back, especially this is pretty much the only professional organization he's known. It would really shock me to see him leave. I think Greer and DeLeo are likely to come back, but I think one of the things that, and we've talked about this with a bunch of other free agents when we looked at them, is like, there are going to be teams next year that are going to be able to offer guys contracts where it's like, you're going to have a legitimate chance to make the NHL next year and make an NHL contract. If nothing else, an NHL payday, which is, 10 times what you make in the A. And like, if that's the opportunity, are you really going to say no to Tucson? Are you going to say no to Laval? Like, their NHL club, are you going to say no to Lehigh Valley? Like, those NHL clubs are not going to be competitive next year. They're very much in year one of a multi-year rebuild. So like, if you sign with those organizations on a two-way, there's a very good chance you play, 15, 20 plus games in the show. And if nothing else, the money there is much better, even if, that's maybe too fast for you. But like, I think that's a hard one to pass up. Whereas like next year, I think the Devils are going to be a much more competitive organization as a whole, and there's not going to be as many kind of spots for looks unless there's injuries. So yeah. I think that would be the only thing that's going to pull Greer or DeLeo or someone like of that caliber away, is their chance a better chance for them to go to the show somewhere else. Otherwise, yeah. I'd be shocked to see them leave. And it's funny too, we said in the preseason with Chase DeLeo after he left San Diego, where Kevin Dineen was the coach, he comes to Utica, where Kevin Dineen is not yet the coach. And then they signed Kevin Dineen as the coach. And I'm like, this was either Chase DeLeo's favorite moment of the season or his least favorite. Like, it was either, yes, I kept the coach I played really well for next year, or it was, damn it, I did everything I could to get away from this guy.
It doesn't seem like he wanted to get away from.
Yeah, it definitely seems like the first one. But when we were in the preseason, we're like, this could go either way. But it's definitely not like that's fine.
Yeah. And I mean, by and large, it seemed like everyone said they enjoyed playing for Kevin, Sergey, and Ryan. I mean, Alexander Holtz one day told me it's the best coach he's played for. And like, yeah, Alex Holtz is 20 years old, and yeah, it's kind of a captive audience. And what else are they going to say? Like, I don't like playing for these guys. You're not going to get that.
Yeah. No,
but it didn't seem like anyone was unhappy from playing for, that coaching staff. And they talked about how close the locker room was too. So, maybe that factors in as well. And listen, there's always change in the AHL. I mean, we see it all the time. Things are going to change. Not everyone's going to be back. Guys get opportunities up front. But it's like, I look at, New Jersey, they've got Jimmy Vesey and, Gertzen. Like, those are spots I feel like you could fill with an AJ Greer. Like,
those are Mason Gerson's spot is definitely one you could fill with AJ Greer or anyone at all on earth.
Switch one former Colorado Eagle for another, Gertzen for Greer.
I think the biggest thing for me with Greer too is that like when he went to Bridgeport last year, I remember the beginning of last season, we're like, all right, that's a good piece for Bridgeport. He was solid in Colorado. Like, this is a good opportunity for him. And he looked awful. Like, he looked from game one in Bridgeport like someone poured sand in all his joints. Like, it was unbelievable. And I remember every time we'd watch them, I'm like, man, like, is this the end of AJ Greer's? Like, he looks like he's got the hips of a 35-year-old. And then all of a sudden he gets traded to Newark, and he does the like James Harden fat suit where it's like, oh no, I'm perfect again. And it's like, that's the only time I've ever seen someone whose life has been tremendously improved by moving to Newark. But like, it was remarkable to see like the night and day appearance of AJ Greer from his time in Bridgeport to the Devils organization the past, year plus. Like, that was truly unbelievable to watch that transformation. So he's definitely happy. I wouldn't be shocked to see him come back.
When New Jersey announced AJ Greer that they had signed him, I said, okay, that's a sneaky piece for Utica. I'm like, that's a guy that is going to be pretty big contributor. And I don't know if maybe a lot of other people necessarily thought that. I don't know. I didn't talk to a lot of other people about it, but my thought was, I think that's going to be a nice pickup for them. And it obviously turned out to be that way. So, you'd like to see him continue to have that success. I know New Jersey has to re-sign your, Wood, Bratt, Zaka, maybe. You got Boquist too. So depending on what they do there, you've got maybe some space for, guys like Alex Holtz. I mean, I would be, I guess, a little bit surprised if Alex Holtz spends more than 20 games with Utica next year. Like, you ideally, obviously still 20 years old. So I don't know, but you'd like to think that your 7th overall pick is going to, take that next step. And I mean, certainly made strides in his game this year too. So.
Oh, definitely. He was an absolute weapon this year.
Yeah.
Well, wow, we have already been on for 36 minutes. So much for quick and dirty. All right, Ben, any closing thoughts here on Utica? Because it's going to be a while before we, get to talk about the Utica Comets again, as their season is over and the off season is long and usually pretty thin with news.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how these roster moves make out and how they go about filling out the roster again next year, because I know with the previous affiliation, you always wondered the same thing, and then it kind of just didn't shake out. And so with a new organization, I'm curious to see how it all kind of works and how they kind of operate. And if you want to continue that winning culture and, winning and development, I feel like you're going to have to put together kind of maybe a similar team, and things get changed up a little bit, but curious to see what shakes out. So that's how I look at it as we sit here in late May and wait and see how things go over the next couple months.
Absolutely. Well, Ben, thank you so much for taking time. I'm glad we were able to finally, get you scheduled in here. Where can people find your work online?
You go to ursentinel.com. We'll covering the sports scene as much as we can with the Comets news. I try to be active on Twitter, so it's BB_UR I like to think that it looks like a smiley face with the underscore. So if nothing else, follow me for that, I guess, So those two places for sure. Facebook as well for the Sentinel Media Company. So all stories get posted there, but definitely ursentinel.com.
All right. Once again, Ben, thank you for coming on. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it. All righty. It's time to tackle another series post-mortem. And it's number 1 Charlotte versus number 6 Bridgeport out in the Atlantic Division. And of course, we're going to, petition our local, our well-known, not local per se, but local to the Bridgeport market, at least. Mitch Anderson from Eyes on Isles coming back in, Deckhands Podcast. Mitch, welcome back to the show, bud.
Buddy, how's it going? How are you guys doing today?
Doing all right.
Pretty good.
It is snow in Colorado today, which is bonkers to me.
Yes, but it is snowing big fat snowflakes here in Denver. And
I get it. It's like it was 2 degrees here Celsius, of course, the other day. And I'm free. I have a space heater on in my basement because we turned the heat off. It's May. And now it's 33 degrees outside. So Celsius, of course, just wild swings. It's like in the mid 80s right now. And it was like just above 40 degrees type of thing in less than 24 hours. Wild time. So I get it, CC. But when the snow's flying in May, you're like, all right, got to live with it.
Yep. Especially in Colorado. That's par for the course. But I digress. We've got unfortunately for your coverage, Mitch, we have a post-mortem series to cover for the Bridgeport Islanders. Yes, the Bridgeport. No. Okay, there we go. There's the disgusted face and shaking the head from Sean. I waited for it. I'm like, is he going to do it? I just said Islanders, so
nope. Just not even going to acknowledge it exists.
Fair enough. Tuesday, May 10th, Charlotte 3, Bridgeport 2 in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Thursday, May 12th, Charlotte 7, Bridgeport 6, also in Connecticut. Bridgeport missing the extra point there. So Charlotte kicking it through the uprights. What a high-scoring game there. Saturday, May 14th, Bridgeport 3, Charlotte 2. Bridgeport staving off elimination in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Monday, May 16th, Charlotte posting a shutout against Bridgeport, 4-0, finishing it off in North Carolina. The Checkers win the series 3-1. Now let's talk about our picks. We didn't get to pick this series on the podcast because AHL playoff scheduling is what it is. It's all over the place in the first few rounds. But Sean did say Charlotte. He did predict Charlotte was going to take this one. Sorry, Mitch. But the model, holy cow, Charlotte, a 71.3% favorite. Wow. Which
may or may not have had a little bit of programming error baked into it, but Charlotte was still the overwhelming favorite in the model. But that is the number that we posted to the public. So that is the number we are going to ride with, even though it's not necessarily what was supposed to happen. But in terms of what's happening, CC, team me up here.
Yeah. So, it felt like a short series. Bridgeport did get one of those games in the series, but Mitch, you know the drill. Sean's going to give his piece, and then we'll have you chime in regards to what you noticed, what you observed in regards to this series. So, Mr. O'Brien, take it away. What did you see out there on the ice?
For this, Charlotte was clearly the faster and more talented team, but we knew that going in, and it was going to be up to Bridgeport to find ways to slow them down and make it an ugly, heavy hockey. Execute that game plan. They definitely gave Charlotte some scares, I think, but Charlotte put that speed advantage to good use, was able to get through the neutral zone and hit the Sound Tigers blue line with speed. They also got the majority of the rush chances by my very loose count. That's the way kind of I saw things. And they didn't have a lot of answers for the Checkers forecheck, given their struggles throughout the season with clean zone exits. That was always going to be a recipe for disaster. But again, credit where it's due to the Sound Tigers. They did not go quietly into the night here. They rallied down 4-0 in game 2 to take a wild game into double overtime. They definitely gave Charlotte some scares. They held the Charlotte Checkers power play to 15.4% in the series, I believe. That's a surprising figure for them. I would not have guessed that, and I would have thought if they held Charlotte to that low a percentage, they'd have probably made it to at least game 5. But here we are. Mitch, what did you see from how the Bridgeport AHL team went down swinging?
Is basically that. I think if you would have scripted this series, it kind of would have gone that way. Like you said, they were favored 71%, although it was probably closer to 60, 65. Yeah. Even then, when you're looking at percentages, that's an overwhelming majority towards the Checkers. And even as a Bridgeport Islanders supporter, that would have been the thing. Like they're the 6th seed to the 1 seed. The favorite is supposed to be the 1 seed. And what happened in the series was they weren't going to be able to rely on Corey Schneider the entire way, right? Like you can say like, I'm going to get solid goaltending from him. And they kind of did outside of that one game. But you can't say we're going to ride that 36-year-old to victory, baby. That's just not how it was going to go down. Even if Charlotte wasn't necessarily an offensive juggernaut, if you will, right? Like their highest score was like 40 points or something. But they had more than one of those guys, right? And so they being the Bridgeport Islanders, they needed their big guns to come out. They needed to have an effective power play. They didn't really. They had a good penalty kill, but the big guns didn't come and dominate outside of Austin Czarnik. And so without that, and with Corey Schneider kind of being okay, that spelt the end of the series. That was it. That was all. They did well, but this shouldn't have been a Bridgeport Islanders series win. It should not have been, and then it wasn't. So it kind of fits. And there wasn't anything different about that series. Your implication that they needed to play a more greasy style of game is exactly what Brent Thompson likes to do, given an old style hockey type of thing. And it just wasn't successful because they didn't have the talent to overcome that. Like you can play a greasy style like that, but then you've got to when you've got those opportunities, capitalize on them, and they didn't have the talent to overcome that.
And I think even like the talent that they do have is not really, doesn't really lend itself well to heavy hockey. Like Simon Holmstrom is not a heavy hockey player. Neither is Durando. Like
Chris
Terry, somewhat yes. Andrioff, somewhat yes.
Definitely,
Zarnik, somewhat yes. But like their heavy guys are also not their talent guys. And I think that's kind of what takes the teeth out of that strategy for them, where it's a lot of their bangers who are doing the banging, and then it's not much else from their high-end skill guys. And like that kind of makes it a strategy that doesn't necessarily work that well. But I think what's going to be interesting going forward is, to see what Lane Lambert does to, switch things up. I mean, he's literally been Barry Trott's assistant coach for 11 years. So I think there's a good chance that we're going to see very much a similar blueprint from what Trotz was doing, which I have mixed feelings about, but that's a story for an NHL podcast and not us. But I think that trickle down, we're not going to see too much change. But I think
you can't see a paradigm shift like that. That would be unfair to where they are. And so the organization as well to have like a complete coaching systematic paradigm shift. So we're going to see the same thing at the AHL level next year, I would say.
Dallas, excuse me. I coughed a little bit there. Just cleaning house today. Dallas is like, all right, bonus, you're out. Oh, by the way, all your assistants, you're gone too.
Wow.
I mean, that's
scorched earth.
Yeah, that's what happens. But like, I mean, you want to talk about Charlotte. I mean, if there was one team that knows how to at least finish out a game that goes multiple overtimes, you would think it would be Charlotte. Just saying. So
big question here, though, and I think this is the interesting one, is would you call this season a success, a failure, or somewhere in the gray area in between, Mitch?
So I did a video just on that today, and the question was the season a success? And the answer is no. It wasn't a failure, but it wasn't a success. And the way that I measured that was twofold. I looked at relative to who they are, but the Bridgeport Islanders, that is, was their season successful? So I looked back at the last 5 years as being the fifth one, and the points percentage was right down the middle. There were 2 worse years and 2 better years. The 2 worst ones were the last 2. So like by that regard, you're fine. Okay, well, what about development? Are they developing players? Because that's the entire point of the AHL. And you can say no. Simon Holmstrom, sure. But outside of that, who developed? Like when you look at NHLE, Otto Koivula added 5, and you're going, okay, well, he added 5 last year, so it seems like he's plateau type of thing. But outside of that, who? It's not Samuel Budzik, that's for damn sure. So there's no Robin Salo. Like I can't really say he took a step up. So like it's Simon Holmstrom. So you can't say we had a successful year because you're average in terms of your record and you developed maybe one guy. Ugh. I wouldn't say it's a failure, but it's on the lower end of the gray scale, if you will.
Interesting. I'm surprised because I'm a little bit more optimistic on my outlook of it. Wow. I really would have thought we would have been on like that. I would have been somewhere on like the negative middle, and you would have been higher. Yeah. Ooh. I mean, I would, any time you win a playoff series unexpectedly, it's hard to call that not success, but I think it's success asterisk. If Hartford doesn't fall off the face of the earth here, we don't ever have this conversation. If Corey Schneider doesn't play out of his mind down the stretch, they don't get in. We never have this conversation. Their attendance also continues to slide. And looking at this strictly from an AHL Bridgeport standpoint, like that's at least concerning. There are other factors outside of that absolutely put their thumb on the attendance scale for Bridgeport there. But I definitely think that it's at least a warning flare to me that we're continuing to see those numbers go down and down and down. But I thought we saw good forward progress from Simon Holmstrom, like you said, and that's a big plus because he is at this point pretty much their one big prospect of concern. Like Robin Salo, I thought on a much smaller scale moved forward. First season in North America, checked the box, didn't look out of place. I think there's a lot for him to build on going into next year, and I think that was what was more important. I didn't need to see big leaps from him this year. I just needed to see him look fine.
Right.
I'm good with him being where he is at the end of this season, but next year I want to see more. But the fact that this wasn't him falling on his face like Samuel Bolduc, then I think that's a strong thing. I also thought we saw at least small progresses from some of the players who aren't really prospects anymore in the system, but are still guys on the team. Like I thought this was a better year for Michael Dow-Cole. It was obviously a huge year for Austin Czarnik in terms of, if nothing else, accepting the role that he was given.
Yeah.
And I think that's not nothing. Like, is this an unqualified success for Bridgeport? No, it is not. But I think that there is enough there that I can't say it's a failure or somewhere in the gray. Like, it's a success, but like it's right on the margins for me. I think the thing that might tip it in the future when we look back is, where can they build from here? Like, this was a good season as a starting point to a better future, but they have to take those steps in the future to make this one worthwhile. Otherwise, if they just go back to, 8th place in the Atlantic next year and, Robin Salo and them continue to fall down as in their development, then yeah, obviously we can look back and be like, wow, that was a mirage. Yeah. But I think for the time being, as we're grading it, I would call it a success asterisk.
Fair. I'm pleased to hear that you're on the more positive side of it than I am. So I thought it was going to be kind of flipped on that. So I'm pleased on that. But yeah, I the playoff thing, it's like you get in an extended playoff and you won 2 games thanks to Corey Schneider. I was like, and it's also, I like to separate playoffs from regular season entirely, totally, because we're talking about a tournament, right? Yeah. Like, people see it as like an extension of the regular season, and it really isn't. I know you don't. But a lot of people go, they're the best team in hockey. You're like, they're the best team in that tournament, right? If you're talking about the Stanley Cup playoffs. Yeah. Same thing with the Calder Cup playoffs. It's just kind of like, I like to separate that and split it into 2 seasons, but they still made it, I guess. So, hurrah.
I mean, and they got a lot of favorable circumstances in that one. Hartford falling off, Corey Schneider playing well above his pay grade at his age. The Providence Bruins missing a lot of important pieces in that playoff series. Mm-hmm. But at the same point, like, they still, the door was open for them, but they still walked through it. That's true. Not nothing.
You got to beat the team in front of you, right? So,
yeah. So, all right, let's peek down the way a little bit here for Bridgeport and talk about who is at least under contract and who could walk next season. Cece, tee us up. Who is under contract in the Islanders organization next year that may or may not be in Bridgeport or may not be in New York?
I thought we had him on that one.
Look at you being diplomatic, Shawnee. All right. Well, under contract for, Bridgeport or in the Islanders organization, as Sean said, you've got Atu Ratu, probably one of the funnest names to say from Bridgeport, Simon Holmstrom, Colin Adams, Cole Bardreau, Samuel Bolduc, Blade Jenkins, one of my favorite names in the game of hockey, Jacob I always have a hard time.
Skarik.
There you go.
Skarik. Thank you. And the loaned to the Chicago Wolves, Richard Panik. Right. So, yes. Technically, there's an asterisk next to his name on the outline as well. So, those are the guys sticking around. Sean, let's talk unrestricted and restricted free agents, but not in that order. Strike it, reverse it.
So, restricted free agents, we have Arnaud Durando, Michael Dow-Cole, Adu Cuevola, Robin Salo, and Parker Wotherspoon. On the UFA side, there is quite the list here. Andy Andriov, Corey Schneider, Ken Appleby, Thomas Hickey, although Hickey got loaned somewhere else, but still counts. Paul Ledoux, Mitch Van de Sampo, Grant Hutton, Austin Zarnik, Felix Bebo, Cole Koski, Seth Helgeson, Jeff Kubiak, Kyle McLean, Chris Terry, Paul Thompson. That is quite the list of guys that could just, take the ball and play somewhere else. Of the restricted guys, I could maybe see Parker Wotherspoon not getting a QO, but like everyone else is definitely getting a qualifying offer. I would be shocked if they weren't all back on some kind of, 2-year, 3-year kind of like not minimum, but a prospect style deal we see a lot in the AHL. The UFAs though, Mitch, who do you think is of that group the most likely to return?
Kyle McLean.
Interesting choice. That is not who I would have gone with.
And it's not to say that the other guys aren't valuable. It's just to say, like, if there's anyone that I see like that they're going that plays a Bridgeport or even an Islander style, it is especially in the playoffs, man. He was killer. The forechecking, the penalty killing, the so on and so forth, the effort, the guts, the heart type of thing. That's a guy that I can see them keeping around. Andy Andrea for sure. If they can, Chris Terry, of course, like you'd like to keep a 60-point player around. I can't see them keeping Thomas Hickey. I'm sorry, Thomas, but it's done. At least with the Islanders, that is. I can see him staying. somewhere else type of thing, maybe. But like that's about it, really. Like maybe Paul Ledoux, Grant Hutton, I could maybe see them doing, but I think it's really strange to see so many names on that list because a lot of them can go and you can see them replace them. Like there's a lot of volatility at the AHL level, right? So I think they could supplement that pretty easily. Plus they've got guys that they're going to still sign, I would hope. Like Williams Foles coming in as a forward. I would hope they sign Rustin Ishikov, who's got until June 1st to be signed. And then, well, I don't think they have too many collegiate guys on the reserve list. I know Christian Krieger staying for a 5th year, or Krieger, sorry. Ben Maragis is not coming. And then, so the last one is not even Jacob Pavanka is with Omaha, Nebraska. So the only guy that they can kind of come in is maybe Logan Cockrell and Rustin Ishikov from the college ranks this year to kind of like supplement that group.
I do think because a lot of these guys on the UFA list too are like guys who seem like they've been in Bridgeport forever. I mean, Van de Sample, Hutton, Bebo Koski, Seth Helgeson, Jeff Kubiak feel like they're lifers basically. But like for me, this does feel like a very good opportunity for Bridgeport to hit the reset button and kind of start over. Like that is a lot of players that are, in my opinion, not worth hanging on to. I have said my piece on Seth Helgeson and Jeff Kubiak many a time. But I think they'll probably find their way back on this roster because Brent Thompson likes them. But
do you think Brent Thompson? There you go. That's what CC wanted right there. I think.
How did you know, Mitch?
I saw your head kind of like glitter in your eyes right there and then.
You felt the vibes. You saw the tells. Like, yeah, I'd be a terrible poker player. That's for sure. But Mitch, yeah, that's my $64,000 question. Obviously, in Cleveland, Mike Eaves gone. San Diego coaching staff gutted. San Jose shakeup. Sommers a senior advisor, and McCarthy is now the head coach after 24 years of the San Jose Sharks having Roy Sommer as the head coach of many of their AHL incarnations, including the Kentucky Thoroughblades, one of my favorite AHL monikers. But anyway, all that to say, $64,000 question. Brent Thompson, does he stay or does he go?
I don't think so. And I think back to what Sean said when Rick Kowalski was hired, right? Like the one thing he told me, like they just hired his replacement. And I was like, whoa, let's pump the brakes. Not this year, not yet. And now I'm like, he's coming in. Get the Rick signs, baby. And it's not like I'm trying to run Brent Thompson out of town. I think he's done well enough in his tenure, but when you see at the NHL level, they're like, we need a new voice, even if that new voice is coming from within. I can see them kind of doing the same and saying, Brent, thank you for everything. It's been a long time, bud. Let's try something different on both of us. Even Brent might be like, I could go somewhere else than Bridgeport, please, type of thing. And I think Rick takes over from there. I think
if this was like, I think Brent Thompson is going to get another year. I don't think he should. I think we've long known that if I were up in control in New York, he would have been gone like before I even, sat at my desk the first time. But like, I think he gets another year. I don't think he should, but I think he does. Ugh. If Lou Lamoriello was not the GM of this team and like he was the one, like if the Islanders straight up were like, we're going to hit the reset button on hockey ops, period. Mm-hmm. Like Lou is out, Trotz is out, everyone then yeah, Thompson's gone, Kowalski's gone. I think at that point, because I think the only reason Rick Kowalski is in this position is because of Lou. I don't think he's a terrible AHL coach, but his track record speaks for itself in terms of development and winning. And that neither of those did he really excel at in his time with the Devils under Lou. So, but Lou trusts him and that's all that matters. But I think Brent Thompson gets another year, but I think it's like 70%. I think there's a reasonable but not overwhelming chance that Lane Lambert decides, now I want a different guy down there. I want a new voice of my own down there. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming he has no say in it's definitely going to be Rick Kowalski. But I do think that Brent Thompson's time in Bridgeport is coming to a close sooner rather than later. And I'm doing my best not to dive into my Brent Thompson piece because, well, we've beaten that horse enough already.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Mitch, closing thoughts on the season for Bridgeport here before we say goodbye and move on.
Again, like on the negative side of Gray, not a failure. I wouldn't say a success. There's some things that they need to address going forward. specifically when it comes to development. Although the Islanders aren't going to have a ton of gaps on the roster, and they don't have a ton of players who are what you would say favorites to make the jump to the NHL outside of Simon Holmstrom and maybe Robin Salo. Samuel Bolduc, he was supposed to be, but not anymore. They don't have a whole lot of guys where you're going like, they didn't turn this guy into something. So like, it is what it is. We'll see next year, because then they should have guys. Well, Atoratu is going to be there. Hopefully, Resnishnikov. William Dufault is a big name, I think, coming in. So if they can turn those guys into something, then we'll see. But the focus is on this year, and this year was meh at best. And so I would like to see some moves addressed, like getting a different head coach down there. So, but we'll see. Bridgeport did well enough, I suppose, and so we'll see next year, type of thing.
It's funny because I appreciate how dived in you are to the prospect system outside of North America and everything, because you could have made 3 of those names up and I would have no idea. Like, I know guys who are in the AHL or who are in the orbit of the AHL, but if you're like a random dude that was drafted in the 5th round and are in Europe and aren't close to like coming to America, I have no idea who you are. So very well played, Mitch, for not like just making up names and like sneaking them in there. Like, I appreciate that effort.
It's my niche. I'm sticking to it.
You know, Mitch has a great scouting report on Aldolfo Pizzeria. He's a great prospect out of Italy. Oh, sorry, I couldn't help myself.
You know, for your jokes, that was definitely one of the better ones.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Molto bene, molto bene.
All right, Mitch. I'm sure if you're listening to the show, you probably already know where you can find Mitch. But for, old time's sake, Mitch, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at TLO Mitch. It has nothing to do with the StarCraft team. You can get my content, my video content on Islanders prospects, not just the guys at the AHL, but out large. That's Deckhands. So just a YouTube Deckhand and you'll find it. And all my written content about the Islanders is at eyesoniles.com. Bo.
All right. Once again, Mitch Anderson, thank you so much for coming on. We will see you probably in a little bit. It's going to be a minute before we have some Bridgeport things to discuss. But in the meantime, we wish you well. Have a good one.
You too, man. Thanks, guys.
Godspeed, sir. See you, Mitch.
All right. We're going to take a break here. After the break, we will get to previewing the Eastern Conference Divisional Finals. If you're just here for these postmortems, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, check us out on social media because we have fun there and we post fun things there. Links to all of that and more can be found on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. Want to run some ads, pay some bills. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. And we're back, and we are diving into the series that are about to happen. We got 4 series to cover. Covering 4 series is something we've done at least reasonably above average through most of the season. So we're going to stick to that format here. We have, as always, we're going to go east to west, Atlantic to Pacific, ocean to ocean. So number 1, Charlotte versus number 2, Springfield. The chalkiest showdown we could get in this one. Game 1, Sunday, May 22nd, 3:05 p.m. at Springfield. Game 2, Wednesday, May 25th, also at Springfield. Back-to-back Saturday and Sunday, May's 28th and 29th at Charlotte. And then Game 5, if necessary, May 31st, a Tuesday, 7 p.m. start in Charlotte. Springfield won the regular season series in this one, 6-2, which I was kind of surprised by. Yeah. But before we dive into this series, kind of an interesting tidbit here is 2 years ago, Springfield was the Florida Panthers affiliate, and now Charlotte is. And you're going to see, Springfield fans kind of seeing some ghosts in this series, specifically Heponiemi and Chase Prisky. At the same time, it's also crazy to see the turnover in 2 years, as those are the only 2 players from Florida still on their AHL affiliate from the time in Springfield. That was only 2 years ago. 2 guys are left.
I think a pandemic might have something to do with that too. But
You still see guys who are on, like we just talked about, Utica. How many guys came from the Binghamton bubble that are still on Utica? Like, a lot. But then again, it seems like Florida's MO up until recent seasons was to never develop anyone and just go buy bottom 6 guys in free agency every year. So Anyway, Cece, start with Charlotte. How did they get here? What happens if they win? The whole 9 yards.
You got it. So they started the playoffs with a first-round bye. And then in a best-of-5 series, they defeated the Bridgeport Islanders in 4 games. Season record for Charlotte was 42-30, a .625 points percentage. Last 10 games were 6-4. Net power play and rank for the regular season was 17.2%. That was good for 10th in the AHL. Playoffs, it was 7.7%, 18th out of 23 teams. Okay, not too good. But net penalty kill and rank during the regular season, 89.7%, good for second in the AHL. Playoffs, 100%. They are tied for second out of 23 teams, maintaining that second place in the AHL in their net PK rankings, that is. Let's talk about what it will take and what will happen if the Charlotte Checkers win and move on to the Eastern Conference Final. What their first one, the first point, they pick up on the blueprint that Wilkes-Barre Scranton laid down. Forechecking hard and forcing turnovers against defensemen that aren't great puck movers. It didn't go so hot for the Penguins because they lacked the talent to finish on those plays most of the time. And they lacked the goaltending to hold those leads. That is not the case in Charlotte, as while they lack true game breakers up front, they can roll 3 dangerous scoring lines. This is especially fortunate because this is the same strategy that they employed for their series against Bridgeport. Secondly, if Charlotte wins this series, they're going to get more consistent play from Joey Decord. I'm not concerned here about Decord per se. He wasn't bad in round 1, but 2 very good games paired with 2 kind of sketchy games were good enough to get past Bridgeport. It won't be good enough to get past Springfield, though. They've got a lot better shooting talent as a team. Decord doesn't need to steal the series for Charlotte to win, but he has to at least give the Checkers better than .910 save percentage performances in order for Charlotte to advance to the next round. All right. Well, enough about Charlotte. Let's talk about the Springfield Thunderbirds. And Sean, how did they get here?
Well, first they got a first round bye. Must be nice. Then they beat Wilkes-Barre Scranton pretty handily in 3 games, although, as you alluded to, and we did in other episodes, chinks in the armor appeared. Season record was 43-33, 625 points percentage. The last 10 games, 8-2. In the regular season, their net power play was 16.6%, good for 13th in the league. In the playoffs, it's ballooned to an unsustainable 46.2%, which even weirder is only second of 23 teams in the AHL. Gotta love short sample sizes. Their net penalty kill and rank in the regular season was 81.2%. That's 26th in the league. In the playoffs, 90.9% net penalty kill. That's 5th out of 23. If the Thunderbirds win this series, though, it's because James Neal found his groove. The T-Birds are a team that has relied on its best players to do most of the lifting on offense. Sam Annis, Matthew Pekka, Dakota Joshua, and James Neal. Neal finished the regular season ice cold. He had 1 primary point in his last 10 games in the regular season. And yes, Annis and Pekka have been very good for the T-Birds so far this postseason. But if they get by the Checkers, they're going to need James Neal to be the real deal once again. And that's not to say that he's been, missing on the ice like he's Jack Quinn. He's had chances, but at this point in the season, getting chances isn't good enough. This is very much the results portion of the season where, yeah, we still want to see good process, but I need you to put the puck in the net. I don't care if you put the puck or the puck should have gone in the net and the goalie made I need you to put the puck in the net. You're getting paid at this point to put the puck in the net in theory, because you're not actually getting paid. But second, if the T-Birds win, it's because Joel Hofer plays well. I think it's pretty likely we see Hofer in game 2 and in game 4 if necessary, as they're both the second game of a back-to-back. We said before about the risk of playing your starter in back-to-back games because of fatigue. The T-Birds were smart and have already shown this strategy when they played Hofer in the second of the back-to-back, and will likely do that again, go back to that well again, rather. However, Hofer is the backup here because Chucky Sideburns is a superior goaltender right now. Hofer looked good against Wilkes-Barre Scranton, I mean, the man scored a goal. What more do you want from him? But Charlotte is very much not Wilkes-Barre Scranton, and one game is not a good measuring stick of how good Hofer has been in the postseason. I'm trusting Chucky Sideburns here to give the T-Birds a chance to win all the games he plays. If Hofer can do the same, Springfield has a good shot to win this series.
All right. Go ahead.
Our X factor for the series, the thing or person that we think is going to be the most direct result that put its thumb on the scale for one side or the other, is special teams. Springfield's power play found a lot of success against a Wilkes-Barre Scranton penalty kill that was never good. Their PK also did good work, but again, a Wilkes-Barre Scranton power play that was never good. Is this a mirage or is it real? Charlotte's PK was great against the Sound Tigers team that was never impressive on the power play. Charlotte's power play also was good in the regular season and generated quality chances against Bridgeport, but didn't seem to find the same success over a small sample size. Both sides here had qualified successes on special teams against inferior opponents, but how that translates to this series is going to be the defining factor, especially as this is likely to be a little bit of a rough and tumble series. I think we're going to see some teams have to kill some penalties and some teams have to score on some power plays. So the ones that can turn, those qualified successes of the last round into success in this round, that's going to be the one that's going to have our X factor and probably the one that takes the series. And it could go either way.
Yeah, we'll see how that shakes out because, the litmus test wasn't probably very good in the semifinals, the divisional semifinals. So this is much more accurate sample size in regards to what these special teams can do for both of these clubs.
This is and we talked about this with the North Division playoffs, where it's like, man, if only they got to play a team in the first round of the playoffs that really probably shouldn't have been there. Whereas all four of the North Division teams that were left in the quarter or in the semifinals were all legitimate Calder Cup contenders. Like any one of them, you could tell me won, and I'd believe it. Whereas, if you told me Bridgeport won the Calder Cup this year, I'd be like, no. This is an alternate timeline. Is this a nightmare? Am I dead?
You lie.
Yeah. This is going to be both of these teams' first real test against a legitimate Calder Cup contender. So the stakes are raised. We're going to need special teams to step it up. But let's get to picks.
Yes.
Cece, who are you taking?
Well, tough choice here. I think this is going to be a series that extends to all 5 games. I'll say that first off. I'm feeling like Charlotte could eke by and take this, but I'm going to go with Springfield. I'm gonna take the Thunderbirds in this one. Yeah.
I don't know if this necessarily goes to 5 games, but I think the game, however many games it's played, we're going to see close games. We're going to see overtime. So if it doesn't make it to 5 and it only goes 3, we're probably still going to see 3 very close games. So I think that everyone thinks, oh, it's only a 3-game series or a 5-game series. Those are different competitive levels. And I don't agree with that, but anyway, picks. I think Springfield might have the better team on paper, but to me, this is about styles and how they match up against each other. I think they're both very capable teams, but I think the stylistic matchup of what one side does well compared to the other, I think that gives Charlotte an advantage here with their speed, their ability to generate a forecheck, and Springfield struggling on their defensive core to move pucks. I mean, if Callie Rosen and the Scott Perunovich Paintor are in Springfield, we have a very different series to talk about. But they're not. And guys like Tyler Tucker are not puck movers. And I think that's a problem. And I think Charlotte's going to take advantage of that. I'm going to take Charlotte here. The model is on CC's side, but very, very slightly. Springfield is a 51% favorite in the series. So very, very small here. But we will see how that shakes out as what should be a very fun series. I think it'll be a very physical series too.
All right. 1 down, 3 to go. Yes. Let's go over to the North Division. And Sean, tee us up with the final out there in the second and final division in the Eastern Conference. Yeah.
North Division finals here. Number 5 Rochester versus number 3 Laval. Game 1 Sunday, May 22nd, 7 p.m. at Laval. Next day, same time at Laval, May 23rd. Game 3 is Wednesday, 7:05 p.m. Got to sneak those extra 5s in at Rochester. Same time on Friday at Rochester. Sunday, if necessary, shifts all the way back to Laval for Game 5, 7 p.m. Season series even split here at 4 games apiece. Cece, how did Rochester get here?
Well, the Amherst beat Belleville in 2 games after they were gifted a loss. After Belleville granted them a playoff entry by beating the Marlies, then they got swept out of the first round for their kindness. And then Rochester beat Utica in the divisional semifinals in 5 games. It took all 5 games to finish that one out. Season record was 37-39, .553 points percentage. Last 10 games, 6-4. Net power play, 18.4%, good for 5th in the AHL during the regular season. During the playoffs, 33.3%, good for 3rd out of 23 playoff teams. Net penalty kill for the regular season, 81.4%. That was 24th out of 31 teams this year in the regular season. And the playoffs, 61.5. Almost just about a 20-point drop-off, 20 points percentage drop-off. 23rd out of 23 teams in the AHL postseason, the Calder Cup playoffs. Ouch. All right. So for Rochester to win this series, first, Jack Quinn has to show up on the score sheet. Quinn has 1 primary point in 7 playoff games so far this postseason, and that was an assist where he more or less lost the puck that JJ Peterka scooped up and scored on. Otherwise, Quinn hasn't been a big factor for the Amherst in these playoffs. Thankfully, there's guys like Peyton Krebs and Arttu Ruotsalainen. They have stepped in to fill that void, especially the latter, who is leading the Calder Cup playoffs in scoring. But against Laval, Rochester is going to need Jack Quinn to get back to the tidy business of scoring goals if they're going to win this series. I struggle to believe they move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. Jack Quinn still in double digits for rank in team scoring. So, yeah, he's got to pick it up. Otherwise, they don't move on. Secondly, the penalty kill looks respectable because based on those numbers I gave you earlier, that is not the case currently. The Amherst PK against Utica, downright atrocious. There's no sugarcoating that. They caught a break that Utica wasn't able to draw more penalties. In the regular season, Laval's power play was pretty ordinary, but they made short work of Syracuse, and it seems unlikely that Rochester will be saints in the eyes of the officials for another round of playoff hockey. If Rochester wins this series, it will be with a net PK percentage of above 85%. That's what it's going to have to be. Lastly, Aaron Dell holds down the fort. I'd say that this should be the defense playing better in front of goaltender Aaron Dell. But that's not the case. That's not a key to winning the series as much as it is a prayer because as you could tell by Shawnee's laughter, that isn't happening. I don't expect the defense to miraculously find its shutdown status. So the key is going to be Aaron Dell stopping enough pucks and most importantly, controlling rebounds throughout the series. Those are my 3 points for Rochester moving on to the AHL's Eastern Conference Finals. Let's pivot to the other team here in the North Division Final. Let's talk about the Laval Rockets. Shawnee, how did they get here?
Well, Laval had a first round bye. Then they beat Syracuse in 5 games in the divisional semis. Season record 39-33, good for a .590 points percentage. Last 10 games, 5-5. Net power play in the regular season, 16% even. That was 19th in the league. In the playoffs, though, 26.7% net power play. That's 6th out of 23 playoff teams. Net penalty kill and rank in the regular season was 85.9%. That was 7th in the AHL. In the playoffs, 78.5%, 15th out of 23 playoff teams. If Laval wins, whoever starts in net needs to stand tall. You're not going to erase JJ Peterka, Peyton Krebs, or Arttu Ruotsalainen, Jack Quinn, etc. from this series. You're just not. So the best you can do is limit them. And while I think Laval's defense has made strides, especially against Syracuse, this is still going to come down to Laval's goaltender stopping pucks. Is that going to be Caden Primo? Probably. I don't think it should be. Kevin Poulin is hands down the better goaltender right now. He's our best goaltender in the league, and he's on the bench. However, game number 2 is the second of a back-to-back, and whoever starts game number 1 should not play game number 2, whichever goalie it is. which in my mind says both goalies get in this series, and both are going to need to stand tall, as no matter how well Laval plays in front of them, they cannot erase the high-end talent that Rochester has. They can only limit them. And when they do get through, Poulin and or Primo are going to have to come up with answers if Laval is going to win this series. If Laval wins, depth players made an impact. If the Rockets' big guns don't get on the board, I don't think there's much hope here. So that's not worth kind of diving into, I don't think. But I also don't know if it's enough for just their big guns to get on the board to push the Rocket to the next round. If Laval wins, I think it's because they get contributions from guys like Gabriel Bork, Joel Teasdale, Kevin Waugh, and Peter Abandonado. They don't all need all of them to score points in this series. Their contributions don't need to be directly on the score sheet either, but they need to make sure they are making an impact, even if that's just controlling the play, breaking up passes in the neutral zone, drawing penalties, winning shifts, making timely checks, blocking shots. Laval is going to need all hands on deck if they're going to win this series, and they're going to need key contribution up and down the lineup to do so. And last but not least, our X factor for the series. Something, either a concept, a play, a person, a unit that we think is going to tip the scales one way or the other here. And just like Rochester's last series against Utica, once again, our X factor for the series is the neutral zone. Laval showed speed and a handful of well-executed counterattacks against Syracuse in the last round. It's no secret that Rochester wants to go flying north-south and attack off the rush. They want to put their guys in space across the blue line with a head of steam. That's been the secret, or not so secret, to the success of both teams in the postseason thus far. So here we go again, it playing another critical role in this series. Control the neutral zone, control the flow of play, control the series.
Alrighty, it's time for picks. And per usual, I'm going to go first. So you mentioned the Rockets and their firepower and their depth scores needing to step up, not put in 5 goals during the series, but at least contribute and not, put the load on the top 6 forward core. I have faith that those top 6, though, and that firepower that helped them pass Syracuse last round, I think that carries over to the North Final, and I'm going to take Laval in this series. Sean, your thoughts?
I just want to admit, at least, I had a little bit of bias in the last round of who I wanted to advance to this round. Okay. I wanted Syracuse versus Utica for one very simple reason. I wanted, our AHL broadcaster of the year and our AHL TV best broadcast. And I wanted, if I didn't get that with Utica, at least I would have Syracuse and Lucas Favale, who does a very good job. Syracuse, a good broadcast. They did, Favale was on our ballot. Syracuse did not make our best AHL TV ballot, but was at least in the neighborhood. Instead, it's going to be me listening to French or silence, and I don't speak French. So that already has me off on the wrong foot in this series, but I digress. Picks. Laval has goaltenders I trust more, a penalty kill that's at least looked coherent at times, and home ice advantage, which if you saw their home ice pregame show in round 1, good God. The ability to contain Rochester's top players concerns me, but they did a good job with doing it at Syracuse. I'm going Rocket here.
The model? Does it agree or disagree with us?
The model is on our side. Laval is a 52.6% favorite, so not a big favorite, but that last little bit of home ice advantage is tipping the scales here, and also goaltending tipping the scales.
Right.
You never thought you'd hear the day where I say I trust Caden Primo over fill-in blank of goaltender here in a playoff series, but here we are. That's the position I'm taking.
Here we are. Wow. Wonders never cease.
We're going to take a break here. After the break, we will get to previewing the Western Conference Divisional Finals. If you're just here for the Eastern half, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so you get episodes in a timely fashion. We will be back. Something like that, to kind of come back, recap what's gone on so far. If we have a post-mortem already, we'll do it then. But anyway, subscribe. You get the episodes in a timely fashion. Also, check us out on social media. We do the memes. We have fun there. All our social media is a little bit different, so you have to subscribe to all of them to get all the content we see. All of the links to that can be found in our Linktree page at linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. If you can't spell that, I can't help you. It's probably printed on somewhere where you're listening to us. We're going to run some ads, pay some bills. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. And we're back. We have the Western Conference now, and we're going to start in the Central, where we have the number 1 Chicago Wolves taking on the number 3 Milwaukee Admirals. Game 1, Saturday, May 21st, 7 p.m. in Chicago. Same time, Game 2 is the next day, but a matinee, 3 p.m. on the Sunday in Chicago. Games 3 and 4, if necessary, are Wednesday and Friday in Milwaukee, May's 25th and 27th. And if it's necessary, Game 5, May 29th, Sunday, a 3 p.m. puck drop, or 3 p.m. start, probably like a 3:18-ish puck drop at Chicago at Allstate Arena in Rosemont. In the regular season, Chicago was 9-5 against Milwaukee this season. But if memory serves me correctly, Milwaukee made at least a late season comeback to kind of make that look a little more balanced. But
I think you're right. Yeah.
Talk to me about Chicago. How did they get here?
And the days go by. Wait, what?
If they win, how will it look?
This is not my beautiful wife. This is not my beautiful house.
This is not my Manitoba Moose.
That is very true. Oh, shots fired. All right. Chicago did not play in the first round. They were granted a bye because they did so well in the regular season. And then in the second round, they beat Rockford in 3 games. They completed the sweep, taking care of their in-state rival. Season record, 50-26, good for a .724 points percentage. Last 10 games that they've played, they've been 8-2. Net power play percentage during the regular season, 17.1%, good for 11th in the AHL. During the playoffs, that bumps up to 26.7%, good for 6th out of the 23 playoff teams. Net penalty kill percentage during the regular season, 87.9%, good for 3rd in the AHL. During the postseason, 85.7%, 6th out of the 23 Calder Cup Playoffs teams. Chicago, if they win, first, it's because Alex Lyon gives Chicago a chance. Lyon was perfectly fine in the round against Rockford, but let's be serious. He wasn't asked to do much in those games. That's unlikely to be the case in this series, as Milwaukee has shown a lot more offensive prowess than whatever it was Rockford tried. Alex Lyon doesn't need to stand on his head or even out-duel Milwaukee's goaltender in order for Chicago to win, be it Connor Ingram or Devin Cooley. But he does need to give Chicago a chance to win each night, and that task is a lot bigger of an ask than it was last round. Secondly, Chicago wins if they stay out of the penalty box. The Wolves' PK in the regular season was good. In the postseason, it's been fine as well. But Milwaukee's up and down season has had one consistent thing. The power play works. Especially now that Cody Glass and Rocco Grimaldi are in action. If I'm Chicago, I want no part of letting the Admirals power play loose. If Chicago can keep the Admirals power plays down to under 3 a night for the series, they're going to win. Lastly, the Wolves win if Podorowski, Nason, and Drury continue to be their best players. I don't think it's any secret that the Wolves offense is primarily driven by those 3. But I think the Wolves are unlikely to win the series if the majority of their offense is coming from the secondary scorers like Gus and Richard Panik. The Wolves' top of the lineup, has been getting it done all season. These are names you're not unfamiliar with if you follow the AHL. And while I'm confident that it continues, it's an important part of their path to victory is to get those 3 guys rolling and to get them on the score sheet for sure. That's what it's going to take for the Chicago Wolves to be victorious in this Central Division final. Sean, what's it going to take for Milwaukee to get the W?
We have to talk about how Milwaukee got here. They had a nice little first round bye. Even though they played during the first round, it was not technically a first round series.
Right.
They beat Manitoba in 5 games. Season record 39-37, good for a .572 points percentage. Last 10 games, a lovely 5-5 even. Over the course of the regular season, net power play was 19.4%. That was third in the AHL. In the playoffs, 18.8%. That's ninth out of 23. Net penalty kill in the regular season, 81.7. Good, in quotes, for 23rd in the AHL. In the playoffs, it's been worse, if you can imagine. It's 70.6% penalty kill, net penalty kill in the playoffs, 20th of 23 teams. If the Admirals are to win, it's because they start hot. Chicago has been the best team in the AHL at winning the first period and carrying that success to the final horn. Milwaukee, on the other hand, has certainly had a number of games where they started cold and chased the game. If they're going to win this series, one of the big reasons is that they finally kept Chicago from owning the opening period, from starting hot, from playing from a lead in the first 10 minutes. If the Milwaukee Admirals win, it's because they got solid contributions from the third and fourth line. Both of these teams feel like they feature top-heavy scoring. Chicago's top six is unquestionably better than Milwaukee's, and that's not to downplay, how good Tanner Glass or Cole Schneider or Rocco Grimaldi are. But if the Admirals can battle to something resembling a draw in the shifts among their top lines against Chicago's top lines, they'll have a firepower advantage in the bottom six, I think. But that firepower advantage only matters if they cash in. If the Admirals pull this season out, their bottom six are going to be a reason why, because they put pucks in the net for the Admirals, to be clear. If the Admirals win, it's because they play boring hockey. If this is going to be a high event, trade chances, track meet style of series, I don't think the Admirals have much chance of winning. If they win, they're going to need to turn this into a tight checking, heavy forechecking, low event style of play with dump and chase and ugly board battles and a grind. They're going to need to make sure that they don't have forwards trapped behind the play in transition and are making smart choices in terms of puck management, even if those are not sexy ones. These are the areas that have not been an area of strength for the Admirals this season. However, if you want to take down the best team in the AHL, you're going to need to do a lot more right than you're used to. Or, to phrase it in another way, in the words of the immortal philosopher Little, you come at the king, you best not miss.
Well said. Well said. All right, let's talk about it. The X Factor. What is the X Factor? The deciding thing, whether it be a player, a netminder, a scheme, a specific
an area of the ice.
Of the ice. Exactly.
For this one, the X factor is going to be the Admirals goaltending. And I don't name a specific goaltender, even though I'm 99% sure we see Connor Ingram start every game here unless he gets hurt. But stranger things have happened, and there is a back-to-back in games 1 and 2, so we could see a Devin Cooley appearance or the legend of Askarov. But regardless, the Admirals goaltending not only needs to outduel Alex Lyon, it needs to win that duel decisively, like a Burr versus Hamilton kind of duel. I struggle to imagine that the Admirals pull this series out with a team save percentage below 920. Connor Ingram and company will need to put on a show if Milwaukee wins this series. Otherwise, Chicago's moving on. The goalies in that room are absolutely capable of it. If you watched the Manitoba series, you saw Devin Cooley do his best Pekka Rinne impression, which I don't think any of us saw coming. But this series is going to fall one way or the other, depending on how they perform in net.
All righty. Time for our picks, and I shall start. First off, kind of interesting that these two are meeting in the postseason after Chicago harbored Milwaukee's and Nashville's prospects. Luke Evangelista comes to mind, of course. But yeah, during the pandemic season when Chicago had not one but two NHL affiliates. So yeah, just a fun little clash of the Titans here. But I would say the Wolves have been on a trajectory to win the Central in both the regular season and the postseason since late in the calendar year of 2021. And they definitely had their eye on it before then. Nothing in Milwaukee's play as of late changes that for me. I'm going to say Chicago.
For me, it's very hard for me to see a path for Milwaukee here. Chicago looked so dominant recently, and the Admirals seemed to stumble backward into that series win at Manitoba. Like, I think everyone who watched it thought Manitoba should have won that series. But that's not the way it broke out. And that's not to say the Admirals are unworthy of being in the spot that they're in. It's that Chicago real good, and Milwaukee has definitely tripped over itself many a time this season and in the postseason already. I got to go Wolves here. Like there's no way I can find a series win for Milwaukee that isn't me doing San Diego things again. And I learned my lesson. Probably anyway. The model is on our side here. Chicago is a 61.6% favorite in the series. That's one of the larger favorites we've seen. And Chicago has earned that percentage. They good. I don't think anyone is confused when, you're playing the team that won the regular season title in the AHL. They good.
Yeah, absolutely. All righty. Time to go to, as Sean puts it, the best coast. And we are going to start with the Stockton Heat. But before that, let's review the series and see what the games look like. Number 1, Stockton out of the Pacific versus number 3, Colorado. The 5 games, if necessary, are going to look like this. First one, Monday, May 23rd, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time in Stockton, California. And then back-to-back games, Monday, Tuesday, May 24th, 6:30 again. That'll be game number 2, once again, in Stockton, California. Then we shift the series over to Loveland on Friday, May 27th. Sean's favorites. Sorry, did I say game
3? We're 3. Friday.
We're at 3. Yes, Friday, game 3. I saw the 3. I thought I messed up.
No, 3. This is game 3. We're good. Keep going. Don't look at me.
So don't look at me, he says. 7:05 p.m., Sean's favorite start time in hockey at the Budweiser Event Center in Loveland, Colorado. Game 4, if necessary, on Sunday, May 29th. Again, 7:05 in Colorado. Tuesday, game 5, if necessary, May 31st, ending the month, possibly on a high note, 7:05 in Loveland, Colorado. So you start the series in Stockton for 2 games, get that home ice advantage, and then bounce on over to Colorado for 3 games. It didn't work for Ontario when they deferred and let Colorado host those 2 games.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
Yes.
But
Stockton 5-3 in the regular season series. So taking 5 of 8 games. Not too shabby for the Heat. All right. Speaking of the Heat, Sean, how did they get here?
Well, the solstice passed and then, okay. Sorry. All right. The Stockton Heat, first round bye, then they beat Bakersfield in 3 games in the division semis. Season record 45-23, good for a 7.13 points percentage. Last 10 games are only 5-5. Net power play rank during the regular season 17.9%. That was good for 7th in the AHL. In the playoffs, a little bit less, 16.7%. That's only 12th out of 23 playoff teams, but there's some sample size things in there. Net penalty killing rank in the regular season, 91.8%. That was best in the league in the regular season. In the playoffs, 10 points down, 81.8%. That is 13th out of 23. If they win, it's because Dustin Wolf continues to do Dustin Wolf things. Now, Wolf has not been as spectacular in the postseason as he was in the regular season, but it's a small sample size. We're not going to harp on that too much. Colorado, however, is an offensive juggernaut, and they're going to get chances. This is not one where you can just shut down this Colorado team. You can only limit them. If Stockton is going to win this series, they're going to need Teen Wolf to stop nearly all of those chances that seep through. A task he's definitely up to, but this offense is scary good and finding a different level right now to the point where Wolf is not a lock for a dominant performance here. I think he does it. I think he plays well. But Stockton is going to go down if Dustin Wolf does not put up solid games each game. If Stockton wins, the PK finds its regular season form. Again, a small sample size for sure, but am I reading this correctly? Colorado's power play is clicking? Is that allowed? Is that legal in Colorado?
Surprisingly, when they're on, they are on.
I mean, this is a sentence that seemed inevitable given the talent that's on it, but they struggled through the regular season despite all of us kind of doing the Jackie Chan meme face of, oh, what are we doing? Regardless, they seem to have it going now, and Stockton's PK looked shockingly mortal against Bakersfield. It didn't matter in that series, but it's hard not to see it play a factor here if its underwhelming nature continues. Finally, if Stockton wins, they find answers for Colorado's high cycle game. Like nearly all AHL teams, the Eagles have adopted similar systems to their parent club. One of those is the use of high cycles in a 2-3 offensive zone look where the Eagles will have a forward up near the blue line with 2 defensemen, making 3 and then 2, so a 2-3. That poses a lot of problems for defenses as they typically play man-on-man coverage in those spots when the puck is high in the zone. And if one of those players at the top of the zone breaks free from that man coverage, they're running free towards the slot with the puck or open for a pass. Teams have struggled to defend this. See also Reign, Ontario. The Eagles also have defensemen who are a lot more active off the blue line during the cycle as well, and that's posed problems for teams trying to defend Jordan Gross or Jacob McDonald coming down off the wall with puck possession in the offensive zone or coming in and being a passing option in the slot away from the play. Stockton is going to need to find answers for that scheme, or they're going to be booking tea times. All right, that is the Stockton Heat portion of the breakdown. CC, it seemed only fair that you take the Colorado Eagles portion as you are that guy. So how did the Eagles get here? If they win, what did they do?
All right, first, how they got here. They beat Henderson in 2 games. They beat Ontario in 3 games. So, yes, breaking out the brooms, sweeping both of them in a best of 3 and a best of 5. Season record, regular season record, 39-29, .625 points percentage. Last 10 games, 8-2. Net power play and rank, 16.2%. Good. 17th out of 31 teams during the regular season. Playoffs, bump that up. 31.8%. I think you were saying that they were clicking in Stockton's little preview there. Yeah, 4th out of the 23 postseason teams. Net penalty kill and rank, 79.5%. 27th out of 31 teams in the regular season. But, oh my adjustments, Batman. During the playoffs, 108.3%, the mighty favorite, first in the AHL. And if you're wondering how that's possible, it means the Eagles have scored more shorthanded goals than they have allowed power play goals. They have only allowed 1. That was against Ontario in game 3. I was about to say game 5, but that was game 5 total.
And they scored what, like 3 or 4 shorthanded in that series? Because
they scored 3 shorthanded goals against Ontario.
And that's why we use net penalty kill and net power play, because those tell more of the story of what happened here. So
they certainly do. All right. So if Colorado wins, it's because special teams continue to do its job. Now I'm going to jump back to just regular power play percentages real quick. Colorado has gone 7 for 21 on the power play, 31.8%, as mentioned above, during this postseason. Eagles have also killed 95.8% of penalties on their penalty kill. Again, like I mentioned earlier, only 1 goal allowed on 24 chances with those 3 shorthanded goals to boot. Ontario's top-ranked power play during the regular season, they boasted all of 1 goal in those 3 games against Colorado. And Stockton's top-ranked PK during the regular season, 86.6%, has taken a step down during the postseason. Like we mentioned, 3 goals allowed, but only on 11 chances. So they have really been disciplined in regards to, because Colorado has like 24 chances this postseason. So they've committed a lot of penalties, had to kill a lot of penalties. Stockton, half that much. Anyways, during the power play, phase 1, post Jason Megna in the crease. Phase 2, phase 3, profit. That was a little meme there if you didn't catch that. A little South Park throwback. But anyway. Secondly, Colorado wins this series if Dylan Sikura returns or the forwards continue to band together in his absence. Now, for those of you who don't know, Dylan Sikura did not play any of the Eagles' 3 games against Ontario. I have not heard anything from Coach Cronin in press scrums as to why Sikura is missing from these games. But instead, Shane Bowers, he was a healthy scratch. He emerged and he accrued 2 assists in game 2. So definitely a wake-up call, definitely a contribution on the score sheet. Colorado has also had the benefit of Oscar Olesen, he had 2 assists in game 1. So coming in, ATO signed that entry-level deal. He's contributing. Also, Dalton Smith. Yes, utilizing the bruiser hasn't hurt either. He actually set the tone for game 2. And, he had a fight against Jacob Doty. And, it was surprising just how much of that physicality that Dalton Smith brought to it. It kind of wore off against, it kind of rubbed off against everyone on the Colorado team. So anyway, guys, the depth of this forward core, guys like Martin Kaut, Jean-Luc Foudy, Ryan Wagner, Andreas Wingerly, Alex Bocage, they're all playing solid games, whether the score sheet reflects that or not. Sampo Ranta returned from a lower body injury. He hasn't showed out, but he hasn't needed to. It's crucial to have this forward depth, especially when Sherwood missed a game to suspension. Callahan Burke has also missed 2 games. So, they've got the depth, and that's something that's been a calling card for the Eagles, is that the forwards have depth, and I would say the defensive core has depth too. Dennis Gilbert is out. He has not played a game this postseason, and yet Colorado has won every game. Rob Hamilton has really stepped up. And Wyatt Emmett coming in, another rookie coming in and filling in on PK time as well on that second PK unit. These guys are just stepping up, and everybody's contributing at the right times. So I think it's time for the X Factor. What is going to be, there we go. What is going to be an X Factor for this series? And just like the Central Division series, it's going to involve goaltending. But my question is, what form of Eustace are we going to see in net against Stockton?
Eustace is right. Eustace is done.
And Eustace for all. We need to bring that back, that dust off that meme. We need to post that again. Before the first round, I mentioned that the Eagles should ride Hunter Miska in net. Colorado, however, decided to do what they've done for the majority of the regular season and hitch their wagon to developing Eustace Anunen, putting the rookie in net. And in 5 postseason games played, he's got 5 wins. He's allowed only 11 goals, 2.11 goals against average, and a .933 save percentage. Now, I tell you, Anunen has a penchant to allow a goal early on every now and again in the game, and he can also allow back-to-back goals in pretty expedient fashion if he gets a little rattled. However, the best side of Eustace that we've seen during the regular season, he has embodied in the postseason. Aside from 2 goals in the last 3 minutes against Ontario in Game 2, Anunen has allowed 1 or 2 goals in pretty well all 5 playoff games that he has started. Whatever form of Eustace shows up in the Pacific Division Final, that will be the tipping point in this series. And Sean, I'm going to defer to you a little bit. What are your thoughts on Eustace Anunen?
I've been surprised. The bits and pieces I've seen from Colorado in the postseason, and that's not been a lot. Mm-hmm. I admittedly have been trying to watch multiple games at a time, and that usually does not lend itself to the deeper dives because there have been a lot of them. Also, you typically take the Colorado Eagles when we talk about them. So if there is one team in the AHL I feel like I haven't seen as much of, it's probably Colorado. But he has looked, I don't want to say calmer or better, but he's looked sharper. Like I feel like the goals that he's let up, that he seemed to be good for like a squeaker between the arms every game, where it's like on a shot that he should have had, like I see you from 100 feet away, and somehow it just squeaks through, my elbow and body, or he, makes a misplay or is off his angle and lets one in. And I feel like those haven't gone away, but they've definitely improved. But I also think, Colorado's played amazing in front of him. So yeah, I think, when your team scores 10 goals, you can be pretty bad and not get noticed. And again, he hasn't been bad, but I don't feel like he's put on that dominant performance. But he's going to need to do so. Like, he doesn't need necessarily to outduel Dustin Wolf, but he needs to make Dustin Wolf earn the W in that goaltending duel. I think that's the big separator here.
Okay, last but not least for this series, it's time for the picks. All right. Sheesh. I tell you, this is another one that I feel can go the distance. I feel like it's a common theme here in the divisional finals, but I've seen how Colorado isn't afraid to get physical and temper attempts to overpower the team. That combined with their scoring prowess and overall skating depth, I think that's going to lead me to pick the Eagles on this one. Sean?
I'm close on this one too. I know the model is not a big favorite on Stockton, and I know why, and I don't always agree with that. I feel like it undervalues some parts of Stockton's team. But I think surrendering home ice advantage, and that's what it is. Colorado is playing more home games in this series, or is scheduled to, than Stockton, and I think that matters. Colorado has just torn through teams that I thought might give them trouble. I thought Henderson, even though they weren't very good, could, scrape together a game or two, and they just didn't. I thought, Ontario would push them to the limits. They did not. It really has been impressive what Colorado's done this postseason. And while Stockton's been good, Colorado looks like they're finding their game at the right time and they're hitting the cylinders. And I think Stockton is not going to win the Calder Cup. I think they're going to bow out at some point, whether it's this round or if they play Chicago in the next one. I don't think they beat Chicago in a best of 7. So I think this is where I'm gonna take Stockton to make an exit. I'm gonna go Colorado here, but I think it's close.
All right, those are our picks. What do the machines have to say? The model.
The machine is not only not that high on Stockton, it's very high on Colorado. It is Colorado's a 58.6% in this series, which is a little bit of home ice advantage because Colorado has 3 home games compared to Stockton's 2. But also it very much does not like Stockton's bottom line. It's not a huge fan of their defense, but it doesn't hate anyone on their defense. But that bottom fourth line that Stockton's been rolling around, it does not like. And I somewhat agree with it. Like, it's a checking line. It's not going to give you much offense. But I see how the model comes to that conclusion based on the input that's given. But I can be like, it's not a great line you got there. Like, that's kind of a weakness on your team. And like, if I have home ice advantage and I get last change and I can find, the Kiefer Sherwood line against that fourth line, I'm going to do it. And the results are going to be good for me. So
yes.
I don't think Colorado has a line like that where I can point to and be like, oh, you put the, Stockton top line against that. And that's a goal in the net for Stockton practically. I don't think that line exists. And I think it does in the other way. So yeah, Colorado, 58.6% favorite. All of us are on Colorado. So congrats, Stockton. You did it.
Yeah, that's how it works here at the Calder Farmstead. Yeah. And with that in mind,
of the reverse jinx.
Yes, the reverse jinx. With that in mind, that will do it for the show. Thank you for watching and or listening. The Calder Farmstead is part of the Full Press Radio Network. You can listen to this and several other great hockey, sports, and pro wrestling programs at fullpresscoverage.com. Just click the podcast drop-down menu in the top right portion of the website. That is the sound of the big list populating, and enjoy. And as always, with all the great quality programming on Full Press Coverage and elsewhere, we thank you that you tune in to our humble AHL podcast.
And if you guys are enjoying the show, please make sure you subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon, please rate and review the podcast. Or if you're watching on YouTube, like the video, comment what you thought of the episode. Doing these things helps other people find the show, and your reviews help us improve it. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at The Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all of that and more can be found on our Linktree page, which is linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on our social media, you can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's AD_DYSFUNCTION. So we can make music for you too. Cece, where can the people find you?
Well, my name is CC Hockley, and you can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at FPC_AHL and at my personal Twitter account at CCHawk. That's SEESEEHAWK. The FPC_AHL account, mainly AHL news and notes and updates on playoff series and stuff like that. My personal account, yes, the majority of it is hockey, but I tweet about music, films, pop culture, my Wordle scores. So hopefully if it keeps me interested, it's not going to be too much bullshit for you. Check out my writing on the Full Press Coverage Network at fullpresshockey.com. Sean, enough about me. Where can the people find you?
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SEANOBRIEN81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien_81. You can find my stats work at Tableau, bit.ly/data dump and chase. That's the model, the graphs, the pie charts, the whole thing. That's bit.ly/data dump and chase, all lowercase, all one word. CC, take us home.
That will do it for episode number 102 of the Calder Farmstead AHL podcast. For Taro Tsuchimoto, I'm Aldolfo Pizzeria. And we thank you for tuning in. Y'all keep your stick on the ice.